Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Academy Anonymous podcast, where we are breaking down all the latest news and updates on the Oscar race. I'm your co-host Joseph.
And I'm your other co-host Jules.
And we have a lot to talk about because we've seen a lot of movies, a lot of contenders. We finally have screened them. A lot of awards profiles that we're going to do one by one. But before that, why don't we start off by saying a few current events that I think are important to mention. So what's been going on?
Well, one of the biggest things is the Governor Award just passed.
Right.
And that's a big, event, spotlight, where we get to see a lot of the films and actors, especially, who are campaigning. So if you're planning on campaigning and you're planning to, participate in award season, you usually make an appearance here. So it's always interesting to see who shows up and who doesn't show up.
Right.
In a way, they were honoring Tom Cruise.
But it was a big deal for a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
Because he finally won an Oscar.
Yeah.
It was an honorary one.
Right.
Actually, what's kind of funny is that they're sort of starting the campaign for next year, right? Because he's working with Iñárritu,
yeah.
and Iñárritu presented him the award.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Iñárritu had a whole speech, about Tom, and then Tom got the award from him.
Very interesting.
And so the campaign for 2026 starts now for Tom Cruise to win that lead actor Oscar.
Right.
But so they recognized him. Who else did they recognize?
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton, right? Who is, I believe, a
two-time Oscar nominee for original song.
What movie? I know Transamerica.
And 9 to 5.
9 to 5. So 1980 and I think 2005.
Yes.
And Transamerica was I really liked that song a lot.
Yeah.
Never been nominated as an actor.
No.
As far as I know, she did not attend the ceremony because she's having some health issues. Okay. And so we send our very best to her. We love Dolly Parton.
Oh, everyone adores
Dolly Parton for president. And so my favorite recognition, though, at the Governor's Awards was for production designer Wynn Thomas, right, who I absolutely adore. I grew up on Mars Attacks. He's the production designer there, but he's worked on so many incredible Spike Lee films, including the best Spike Lee film, which is Malcolm X.
Right.
And he was even the production designer of A Beautiful Mind, which was a Best Picture winner. And he has never been nominated for an Oscar.
That's nuts.
And so, to me, that's heartbreaking because even someone like Tom Cruise and Dolly Parton, they've been nominated. And Wynn Thomas has done nothing but grade A work in movies that have been nominated for a bunch of different categories and has even won Best Picture, A Beautiful Mind, and he has never been mentioned. So I loved that.
I will say, that just spotlights a big issue with the Academy Awards as a whole, this whole, institution, which is that so many worthwhile contenders slip through the cracks. And meanwhile, there's an inconsistency and other people get a bunch of mentions and recognition and other people just don't. So there's always this longing for, consistency. Right. And it always seems like it's lacking.
Yeah. And the final honoree, I think, was Debbie Allen, who I know from Fame. Actress, choreographer. Actually, I did not know that she was actually a producer on Steven Spielberg's film Amistad.
I didn't know
in 1997, which didn't get an eye for Best Picture, but she was a producer on that, and that's great.
And I also say that my problem with the Governor Awards, I've heard that it's one of the best ceremonies to attend.
It's private ceremony.
It's a private ceremony. I think I've heard from people who've attended that it's quite special, quite intimate. Quite lovely. I think they sit you in a table with, other other filmmakers, other craftsmen and women who are, the bread and butter of this film industry, who you might not know. And it's an opportunity for you to exchange communication. So an actor might get to know a sound designer, and a makeup artist might get to know a editor. So, there's something very, very, very quite lovely about that. But I do take issue with the Academy Awards using the Governor Awards sometimes as a kind of fail-safe. We're not going to give you an Oscar, or we ran out of chances to give you an Oscar, so I guess we'll give you an honorary Oscar.
The actual winners.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of, I guess, meant to replace the fact that, we're just not going to give you an Oscar.
I agree.
Angela Bassett won it last year, and that was, off the heels of losing for Black Panther in 2022.
Samuel Jackson won one recently.
Samuel Jackson won one. So sometimes it just feels like this is how we can fix our errors.
So let me ask you a question.
I take issue with that.
So are you of the opinion that it is not a substitute? Like, do you think that Win Thomas's honorary Oscar is a substitute for how many times he should have been nominated at the Oscars, and they failed to give him one nomination throughout his career?
I would say that, in my opinion and my personal view, it's not a substitute, because it's a ceremony that doesn't happen live. It's private, and it's more of a career achievement than it is a specific, work that you did that's being highlighted by your peers.
It's not the same, right?
It's just not the same.
It's not the same.
It's just not the same.
Imagine, I mean, I think Win Thomas has had an incredible career, and I think he's one of the best production designers working in the U.S. But imagine what would have happened had he gotten some of the recognition that he deserved working on those Spike Lee films. Yeah. Imagine what would have happened for his career, but certainly what would have happened like for the art form. You know what I mean?
I think every filmmaker in this industry, yearns to have that moment of being actually recognized for something that you did, a film that you worked on, by your peers, and having that sort of nationwide, global platform for people to see, your work being celebrated. Right. Not just people in the industry, but people just all around the entire world. Right. Everybody wants that. So, I just don't think that, a career achievement award, as great as that is, replaces that.
I would agree with that. And I also think that like there are more egregious levels of it. So like Tom Cruise has yet to win. Right. And that's, I think, problematic. But he's been handsomely nominated. Yeah. And he's had great films up for Best Picture. And there's every reason to believe that he is going to have an opportunity to win a competitive Oscar. That may not be the case, for Win Thomas, who's a little bit pickier about the projects he does now. Right. So I do think, it gets a little bit more egregious. Like, I would have loved to see Dolly Parton nominated as an actor. Yeah. Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I love that movie.
I love her in Steel Magnolias.
Steel Magnolias. So she's such a memorable actor, right? That you overlook everything that she contributes to a project. But, over time, 25 years later, 20 years later, you realize she's just a special actor on screen. And so I do feel like there are levels of how egregious it can get. And so, for Dolly Parton, for example, I would have wanted her to have been nominated for a competitive Oscar at some point. Right. I don't know if that's in the books anymore, and that's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah. So, I have mixed feelings about it, but I do think that as a celebration in and of itself, I think it is quite special. And I like how they, I like what they do. And
do you like that? Because when we were growing up, they used to have it in the actual ceremony. Do you like that change?
I like having it be its own thing. I just think that it should be possibly to be a little bit more on par with the Academy Awards. It should be live.
Oh, that would be great. Like they could do like a whole Oscar weekend and do like the Governor's Award one night. And that would be really cool. I think
that would be nice.
I agree. I hadn't thought of that, but that would be really, really cool. Yeah. I think the other big current event that I wanted to at least mention was we got our first precursor, which is that the Gotham Film Awards announced their nominees and some interesting choices. I don't know what you made out of them. I know that there were some significant changes made to these to some of these nominations. Like, for example, there's a top 10 for Best Picture instead of a top 5. And the Gotham Film Awards don't have any kind of loyalty to anyone. So to a certain degree, they didn't tell anyone that there's going to be 10 spots or that there's going to be 2 script categories. They're just, they're picking members of the industry to be jury members and then coming up with nominations.
What I like about the Gotham Awards is that they're categories that are selected by a jury. And I think it's usually, writers, journalists, press. And so I like the idea of a group of collaborators getting together and deciding the nominees. I actually think that that's the direction that we need to move in for the Academy Awards. The Academy Awards, and we've talked about this several times, should be like the SAG Award Committee, like the Cannes Film Festival that has a special jury that everyone sort of freaks out about when it's announced. they should have a small group of people, a committee that is selecting the nominees that's fairly representative, of the awards, of the body itself, of the voting body itself. It certainly has to be representative of that, but they should select who the nominees are. And I think that would go a long way to fixing a lot of inconsistency issues that the Academy Awards have. So that's something that I quite like about the Gotham Awards.
I mean, we know that, for example, some people commented on how One Battle After Another was essentially the most nominated film, I think, at the Gotham. And I think that I read somewhere even maybe in its history, and it is a film made for $150 million from Warner Brothers that showed on, 70 millimeter IMAX.
Right. That's the other thing that's the other side of the coin. I would say that the thing I really dislike about the Gotham is that they've transformed from being this platform for independent cinema into now sort of joining the other awards bodies, of being, a platform for Oscar fodder, Oscar punditry. So now it's trying to have its cake and eat it too. So you get the films that will show up in the independent circuit, but you'll also get films that are certainly pegged for Oscar nominations. Mm-hmm. I think that leaves a door open for the organization to be, kind of negotiating with these bigger studios for, nominations and whatnot, which is part and parcel with many of these award body organizations. And so I think in a way they've lost some of their identity, and I think a crucial part of their identity. And so that's what I think is the big bummer about the Gotham Awards. That being said, the committees that are selecting the nominees know what they're doing. So usually the nominees are pretty fucking good. And they are a nice representation of some of the best that we've had in cinema this year. But I really dislike how how the Gotham was really a place to highlight films and performances and filmmakers that were not going to get a chance to get highlighted throughout the rest of the award circuit because they're just not part of a bigger studio or part of a bigger movie. And so we've lost some of that. And I think that, that sucks.
I think that's what some people are sort of complaining about and feel likewise that there's, maybe a missed opportunity here because you have so much of the inflated punditry that's going to occur, at the end of the year and at the beginning of the next. And the Gotham has kind of felt like a separate thing. It kind of almost felt like the Gotham, to a certain degree, was the less populist version of the Independent Spirit Awards. Mm-hmm. Now it kind of feels, as you've said, where
I would even say it's transcended the Independent Spirit Awards, because the Independent Spirit Awards still would never nominate a movie like.
Well, they're not allowed to. They're not allowed to nominate.
Exactly. So in a way, like it's now this weird kind of like child between like the Independent Spirit Awards and the Golden Globes.
Oh, that's interesting, because I will say that the second most nominated film we had made an article and I had written some of our predictions for the awards, and I was very much of the opinion that it was going to be a great morning for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Right.
And it was the second most nominated film. Yeah. And that certainly feels to me like the film
of course,
that was going to be nominated among the 5 Gotham Best Picture nominees. Right. And it was probably going to be the winner, right? Along with, if you're looking at that list, I think it might have been If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, Familiar Touch, Lurker, East of Wall, some of the smaller films, right?
Yeah.
And so they're kind of stuck in that weird place between, One Battle After Another breaks records for the most nominated film, and at the same time, the second most nominated film is If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Right.
And so it's kind of odd. It also used to be that, like, when they give their award for, whatever category it is, you would hope it was going to give some kind of leverage to the film that won it. I won't lie. When Honora lost last year to A Different Man, I was over the moon. I was over the moon. And I like Honora, but the audacity to say that, we're going to go ahead and give it to A Different Man, which was so underseen, so undervalued by audiences. I loved that.
Right.
And so,
but again, I think that's kind of what's cool about the Gotham Awards. That they'll also have a jury that selects the winners.
Mm-hmm. But then I will say that. So how did that even really help A Different Man? It didn't.
No, it
right?
didn't.
But the hope is that what it did help was, entice the industry to help the filmmakers make another project, right? That's at least that's the hope for me.
Right.
And so,
I mean, if you look at the Best Picture list, I mean, like I said, you can't fault them with their nominees. They're wonderful nominees, great nominations. These are people who are cinephiles who know what they're talking about. So Begonia, East of Wall, Familiar Touch, Hamnet, If I Had Legs I'd Kick You, Lurker, One Battle After Another, Sorry Baby, The Testament of Anne Lee, and Train Dreams. Now, what's pretty cool is that I believe the only two movies here that we have not seen are East of Wall and Familiar Touch. We missed East of Wall at Sundance.
They did not play at a theater near you, or barely played at a theater near you.
And I've been dying to see Familiar Touch, but we haven't gotten to that yet. Every other film we have seen, and many of which we'll be talking about. I love Lurker. We'll get into Testament of Anne Lee. I got a chance to see If I Had Legs I'd Kick You Again. We saw it at Sundance, and this rewatch was very, very good. It was a very resonant film experience. Watching that again, I was a big fan of Begonia. Maybe we'll get into that later. You have some different opinions about Begonia. And let's see, for a foreign language film, it was Just an Accident, No Other Choice, Nouvelle Vague, Resurrection, and Sound of Falling. Together, we've seen 4 of those nominees. We just missed Resurrection at Cannes. Unfortunately, I can't wait to see that. Hopefully, it comes out near here. For Best Documentary, 2,000 Meters to Andrivka, Black News, Terms and Conditions, My Undesirable Friends, Part 1, Last Air in Moscow, The Perfect Neighbor, which we have seen, and Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk, which went to Cannes, and we missed it, unfortunately.
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot of great films. One film that was not there, which I was pegging to be the favorite, was Marty Supreme.
Right.
And so a lot of people are sort of saying that it was ineligible because whatever screened at New York twice was not a finished cut, and that there was going to be changes, and so that for some reason they could not officially consider the film.
Interesting.
Sounds super sketchy to me. Whatever. I mean, I think it's a missed opportunity. I think it's odd, to say the least.
But I do like that, again, you'll get films that pop here that, we can expect them to possibly not pop anywhere else.
This
in
was
the next
their one
few months.
pop, yeah.
Right. So Kelly Reichardt got nominated for Best Director for The Mastermind. We saw that at Cannes.
Best Actor also.
And Best Actor. Oliver Lax got nominated for Surratt, which was really cool. Let's see. I was a big fan of Urchin, and Harris Dickinson got nominated for Best Breakthrough Director. Carson Lund, Aoife's is one of my favorite films of the year. That got nominated for Best Breakthrough Director. Let's see. Sound of Falling got a couple nominations. I was a big fan of that out of Cannes.
Nouvelle Vague was surprising to me when it got nominated for foreign film, international film.
Right. Which, Nouvelle Vague, we've talked about how it hasn't really had the sort of impact and surge that you would have hoped, or I'm sure Netflix would have hoped. We'll be talking about No Other Choice soon. I'm dying to watch Preparation for the Next Life. I haven't seen that yet.
It only got that one nomination, which I think...
No, I got 2.
Got a couple?
No, I got 2, yes.
But there's a film that I would have thought would have gotten nominated for Best Picture.
Right.
That's what I thought.
Right, exactly. Pillion, I loved out of Cannes, and I still am confused. Is that coming out this year? Is that coming out next year? I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Well, I know it's coming out wide next year, but is it going to have a qualifying run? I'm always interested in the performances that get picked by these committees. I think this committee that picks the performances picks both the lead, the supporting, and the breakthroughs, which is interesting. And I do think one of their goals is to spread the love a little bit. And what's really cool is that in the lead performance selection, I think we're only missing one film, I believe. And I think it's a film that hasn't come out yet.
My Father's Shadow.
My Father's Shadow.
Yeah. I think it went to Cannes. I think we missed it, though. Right.
And in the supporting categories, we haven't seen Jay Kelly yet.
Jim Jarmusch's film.
And Jim Jarmusch's film. Everything else we've seen. So, it's an eclectic list, and, I can't fault them. I like I said, there are many, many, many interesting nominees here.
Here's where I really go off the rails, which is all right, so you want to be the in-between thing because you don't know if you want to be a Golden Globe or if you want to be a Spirit Award. And so you're kind of stuck between one bat after another. And If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, between HAMNET and Familiar Touch. Fine. You know, I think obviously they have to get themselves together. But then you have the special awards. And those are extraordinarily obnoxious.
Right. I'll just say before we get into that, the last category I didn't mention was the breakthrough performances. And for example, I'm pretty happy that, you know, Tonio Chiu got mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
For Kiss of the Spider Woman.
That was great.
Which is nice to see at least some love for that movie there. Preparation for The Next Life got another mention there.
Mm-hmm.
A$AP Rocky for Highest to Lowest. That was weird to me.
I really liked him in that movie.
Really? I thought he was better than If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Either way, just give him something. He's had, I think, a really strong year.
Right. So the tributes.
The tribute awards to me are the most frustrating.
Yeah.
Because what you're essentially saying is the people who sort of own the conversation, whether it's the awards conversation, the pop cultural conversation, the critics conversation, the fans conversation, they can sort of exist in both. Now, at least they can exist in both. They can be a Best Picture nominee and they'll also get a special mention. And some of the smaller films don't get any of the special mentions. So I kind of feel like, did you really need to nominate, for example, the Director Tribute Award, Noah Baumbach for Jake Kelly?
Right.
Wouldn't it have been more appropriate to give this award to Noah Baumbach when he was making those really, really tiny independent films that barely got any attention and not a film brought to you by Netflix? You know, like, why couldn't we give him this in his era of While We're Young, Mistress America, you know?
But I also feel you're right. And that it's odd to be giving that award to Jake Kelly, which didn't do that well at the nominations. It didn't get nominated for screenplay, I believe. It got Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
So, like, it just seemed like they weren't that crazy about it to begin with. And now it's getting its own tribute award. That's the kind of thing that gives the impression that there's some, bribing happening here.
Yeah, that
like
some of these
Netflix wants an award. So we got to give them one.
So Netflix brings you the Director Tribute Award. The Ensemble Tribute, I love that it's Sinners. I do. I think you can't fault it for that. But so then why wasn't Sinners good enough to nominate for Best Picture?
Right.
Which is kind of weird.
Just inconsistent.
It's kind of inconsistent. So like the musical tribute is going to Song Sung Blue from Focus Features,
that to me is crazy.
I mean, Kiss of the Spider Woman is right there.
Yeah.
So I don't understand sort of how you made it. You know, it feels to you like that's brought to you by Focus Features.
Yeah, it's like Focus Features. I want an award here. You know, let's make it happen.
Exactly.
And then one of the most egregious ones has to be the tribute to After the Hunt. You know, which is absolutely bonkers.
That's kind of, that's borderline
insulting.
Offensive. That's borderline offensive. I don't think that you've done anyone a favor. That recognition isn't, I think, for the filmmakers. It's not for the culture. It's not for the fans. It's not for the art form. Who does that serve other than Amazon. Who's going to have a premiere date on streaming of all things?
No, but it's crazy. Like, if Amazon had one of the best, like they did last year, Nickel Boys. Okay, that makes sense. It's just one of the best films of the year.
Exactly.
Period. This is one of the most mixed films of the year. It has a 35% critic rating and people rating around Tomatoes. It's in the 50s in Metacritic.
And I would like to know which of the critics
didn't do well at the box office.
So which of the critics or the press members who are sort of repping the other nominees in the other categories have sort of supported the mention of After the Hunt for the Visionary tribute? I would like to know that, because something makes me feel that we want the press and the members of the critics, which is great, to sort of nominate these quality film titles and not be limited by budget in these other categories. But then we're going to give a special award and we're not going to get any input whatsoever as to who should actually receive it.
Right.
Instead, we're just going to say, well, who are our corporate sponsors?
Right. So it's like Amazon calling and saying, okay, so listen, I saw the nominees. I didn't see After the Hunt anywhere. So how are we going to work? How are we going to fix this?
Yeah. And I feel like it's very unfortunate, because there's just so much talent in After the Hunt, and Luca Guadagnino is an immense talent.
An incredible filmmaker.
And I actually think he got a tribute, last year,
I'm not sure,
because he had such great work. Well, if they didn't give him a tribute last year, that made absolutely no sense.
Right.
But it kind of goes back a little bit also to me with the whole After the Hunt is the opening night film of New York. There's something off about that.
Right.
That right now, at least if you're a cinephile, if you're a fan of the New York Film Festival, if you're a fan of the art form, you're sort of thinking, is Amazon sort of like twisting the arm of these organizations in order to get like those really prestigious spots? That means something. And so like, why would opening night ever be After the Hunt when you have Resurrection right there?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or another, you could make it Magellan. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I do think that there's something really weird about it. And that selection of special awards is extremely frustrating. I love Tessa Thompson. Tessa Thompson is one of my favorite actresses. We saw Hedda. We have so many thoughts on it. I loved to see her nominated for Best Actress. I don't think she needs the Best Actress mention and the Spotlight tribute. I would rather, her get the Spotlight tribute and give one hell of a speech and then, have an extra spot open and lead. I'm not sure that this is the award ceremony where you need to have anyone doubling up on prizes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree 100%. So it's a mixed bag. I do ultimately like the quality that I see with the nominees. But again, we've been mentioning, I mourn a little bit for like what we're losing, what we've lost, and then this sort of infiltration of quote unquote, other entities, sort of having their hands on this award ceremony is also quite frustrating. Yeah,
the special interests.
Yeah,
but anyway, so I think the other thing to talk about in terms of current events. I think we should talk about Frankenstein. We talked a lot about what we thought was going to happen before it came out. It has officially come out now.
Right. You and I were mentioning that Frankenstein was looking like just to remind you guys in one of our last podcast episodes, that Frankenstein was looking like a sleeper contender because it was primed to do well in costume design, in tech categories like costume design, like original score. And if you look at Guillermo del Toro's history, when Guillermo del Toro hits in those categories, it's because he has a Best Picture nominee in place.
Yeah.
And so, lo and behold, we said that maybe a month ago or so, and then now everyone's got Frankenstein in their top 10. Having seen all of Netflix's contenders minus Jake Kelly, I feel very comfortable saying that Frankenstein is definitely Netflix's big horse. Will that result in it being a, Best Picture nominee? Time will tell, but I will say, as we've been saying, it's certainly primed to be that because it's primed to do really well in the tech categories.
So, so after seeing the film for yourself, what are you sort of pegging the film for right now in terms of nominations?
Well, I think that, and the other big thing that happened was when it runner up as a festival favorite at Toronto, obviously. And so,
people are loving it, by the way. It did well on Netflix, right?
It's doing well on
and
Netflix, yeah.
We've spoken to a number of people who really enjoyed the film.
Yeah, and it's also really critically acclaimed. It's more critically acclaimed than his last Best Picture nominee, Nightmare Alley.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it might even be more critically acclaimed than Pinocchio. I'm not sure. And so, it has everything going for it to get certainly a costume design, a production design, a original score, and a cinematography nomination. That's 4. And I think that the iconic source material that it's based on, it lends itself to very likely getting a screenplay nomination, which is, unusual because, I would say that one of the criticisms I have about the film have more to do with its script.
And I think a lot of people have mentioned that also.
Right. But again, maybe just the sheer magnitude of, the standing of that Mary Shelley novel is going to help it get nominated. There's also a stat that, if you placed in the Toronto People's Choice at any placement,
more often than not, you
get a screenplay nomination at least.
Yeah, so that bodes really well. Makeup,
of course, makeup is a huge contender to win,
right?
And so I think that, what is that, like 6
That's 6 so far.
And then if you
what do
add
you think about?
best picture, that's 7.
Well, that's 7. What do you think about Jacob Elordi?
After seeing it, I feel pretty confident that he won't get nominated. I think he does a good job. I personally am more fond of his performance in Priscilla. I think he's great in that.
But he's had a great few projects. I mean, he's Sofia Coppola.
Yeah.
Emerald Fennell.
Right.
I think he worked with Crizell on, I think, a miniseries. So now Guillermo del Toro. So like he's building up a pretty good filmography.
He is, and I think that this will certainly set him up for the next one to get nominated. I still think he stands to do well at the Golden Globes and the SAG Awards. So I see him, doing well in the precursors and doing well with critics groups, but I don't think he makes it in the end. I just think that I didn't see. I'm not sure that I felt it was a performance that was going to speak too loudly to the acting branch.
Very interesting. I mean, the last thing I'll say to that is one thing that I don't think a lot of people mention or talk about, which I'll go ahead and sort of shout out, is the sound work is pretty top notch in it. And so this is a very competitive year for sound design, but I would not be surprised if it is as beloved as you're saying. It can get 7 to 8 nominations if sound is somewhere in there as well.
What did you think about Jacob Elordi?
My gut says right now that he probably will make it in, because I do think that he's got the Globe and the SAG. There's only one thing that I think I've told you I don't like, which is I do not like a category that has Jacob Elordi and Paul Mescal. And so that's the only thing that's tripping me up. The other thing is that I think Netflix is going to get one of their guys in, we haven't seen Jay Kelly yet.
Right.
People are pegging Adam. I just don't know if Adam can make it in by himself.
Right. I haven't seen the film yet. I don't think he will be making it in by himself, even if I think I'm preparing for a poor showing overall for Jay Kelly. But I just think that the acting branch is going to be a little bit more receptive to Jay Kelly and what it's about, and wanting to nominate a performance from that movie than necessarily the fantasy of Frankenstein.
Could be. I mean, we'll see what happens. I also think sometimes that voters base their nominations on what the next project is. And so Wuthering Heights is right there. I think there's like an interesting overlap because Wuthering Heights is coming out in February. Jesse Buckley will end up being Bride of Frankenstein around the same month, I think, or something like that. And so there's some interesting, overlap going on there. But I think he has a good chance, but we'll see what happens.
And another film that we saw that, most of you have already gotten the chance to see possibly is Bugonia.
Yes, Bugonia.
And we saw it a few weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
At a special screening. And I really loved it. I really thought that the film really touched a nerve. Especially with, contemporary events and sort of contemporary culture. And I thought it was very riveting, and it was sweaty, and it was dark, and it was disturbing. And I quite liked it a lot. I will say that the third act for me is where things get a little bit bumpier. I think with a better third act, the film would have been aces. With the third act it has, my initial impression coming out of the film was that it was going to be very difficult for that movie to get many Oscar nominations. Coming out of the film, I felt pretty confident that Emma Stone was not going to be nominated for Best Actress. It doesn't help that she just so recently won her second Oscar, and it was for a Yorgos collaboration, so I think they're ready to give Yorgos a break. Yorgos hasn't done well in contemporary films. He does well more in period films, or they like their Yorgos in that manner. And I think that third act stands to. I think that if you don't get on the wavelength of the film, you're not going to like the film. It certainly has its own wavelength, and I think it's not as accessible as something like Poor Things, which in and of itself is not fully accessible, to everyone either, or The Favorite. But these contemporary Yorgos pieces are more sinister, darker, And so I think there's a strong chance that voters are going to see the film and kind of be turned off by it. But I think that a lot of them might be especially turned off by the ending of it, or the third act of it. That being said, I think Jesse Plemons gives one of my favorite performances of the year. I think he was flat out amazing. I think he was fucking terrific. I would love to see him get nominated for Best Actor, but I really don't think that's going to happen.
Has never been nominated for a SAG. I will say that individually.
Right. I don't think this is the kind of, especially now that the SAG is not, the SAG we remember. Now it's sort of this combination between, the SAG and other entities. I don't see that being a popular choice for SAG. And so I thought that, honestly, the best chance the film has is a possible nomination in screenplay. And even that, I feel pretty confident, or maybe I shouldn't say confident, but right now my gut is telling me that it also doesn't make it to screenplay. It certainly doesn't make it to picture. And that really the only thing that maybe I could be wrong about is that Emma Stone, in the very lackluster Best Actress category where there's like only 8 contenders or 7 contenders, maybe she could sneak in because they prefer to give Emma Stone a 5th, acting nomination, which again, it sounds wild to me. So soon after winning her 2nd Oscar, maybe they'd rather nominate her. And what is clearly a big commitment to her role, than certain other actors contenders that might be in her in her surrounding. So possibly, but right now I see it as a film that gets blanked.
Well,
and that's coming from someone who really, really liked it.
I thought I had very strong performances. I think the strongest pushes are going to be for Emma Stone, who should repeat where she's really well liked, the Globes and the SAG. I think Jesse Plemons, who was nominated for Kinds of Kindness, he should get the Globe nomination, and I would not be surprised if he got the SAG nomination. I think he gave a brilliant performance, but he's a brilliant actor. I did not like the film. I'm not a fan of the film. I'm not a fan of the third act, but I'm not huge on the first or the second act either. In my opinion, the best performance actually belonged to the young man, who I believe is on his first film. I believe his name is Aidan Delbus, who's I think competing and supporting. He was actually my favorite performance. I was not surprised when it, maybe had a little bit more of a polarized reaction from critics when it opened up here. At the same time, I think it's recovered pretty well. I will
say it started out in Metacritic with like a 78,
right,
and then went all the way down to a 70. Now it's like
68. I remember it being 68 at some point.
Yeah. And now it's settling like at a 72, 73.
Yeah, so I think it recovered a little bit, and I think it did make some money at the box office. And I know that it didn't get a D+ like other films did, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I also say it's still in the camp of films that certainly underperformed for how much they were made.
Right.
So that film has, I think I read, a budget of $55 million.
Whoa.
Right. And I mean, as much as I like the film, $55 million sounds like a lot for that movie.
It's not going to make it. It's not going to make $55 million back.
Right. So even if, it didn't do, chump change,
right.
It's still far off from what it was made for.
Well, so to me, I think it's, second tier Yorgos, who said he's going to go on a break now, which I think he works very consistently, so I kind of understand it. But I didn't like the script. I didn't like the script from Will Tracy.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I quite like the film, but Will Tracy is kind of more miss for me than hit. I didn't love his screenplay for The Menu either, but I do think that his collaboration here with Yorgos was much more, felt much more grounded and evocative than The Menu did, which I was not a fan of at all.
So I kind of, I didn't like the script too much, which made sense with The Menu, which I didn't like too much either. I still think it has a shot in screenplay though, because I do think that no matter what the piece is timely, and no matter what my personal feelings are on the movie, I also think that it's in this strong position where I feel like it can maybe get some international support to get more nominations than I would have pegged it for. I came out of the movie thinking that it's not going to be nominated for anything, very difficult. Even if, Best Actress is sort of slim for competition. But the more I think about it and the more I see that it's kind of recovered, for example, I know it did pretty well, I think, in the shortlist for the European Film Awards. And so I would not be surprised if some international appeal for the film is going to help the movie resonate in a bigger way at the Oscars. And so I think you said it. You shouldn't sleep on the acting categories, the script category. I tell you what, after I saw it, and this is why, they don't pay me to do these things, but I thought Emma Stone is a supporting performance. I did not think it was a lead performance, not at all. And I think she would be a surefire nominee for supporting actress had she been campaigned appropriately. So, for example, that's my point of view. That if the campaign knew what they were doing, they would shift her down to supporting actress.
Right, but I guess I disagree with that. But I want to just mention that we have two differing opinions about the film. And I think that goes to what I was saying when I said, this film stands to be, have a polarized reaction from what I believe will be polarizing for voters, which is going to hurt its case for the Academy Awards.
Right. I mean, we'll see what happens, but I definitely think that this is the kind of film where I think it'll do well on its way to getting, I don't know how many nominations, but it competing in contemporary categories is going to be really good at the guilds. I expect Golden Globe nominations, and I expect SAG nominations. And so this is one that I would not sleep on, despite, I guess for me, this is one that can go 0 and one that can go 1 and one that can go as high as even 5.
I disagree. And like I said, and we're going to have a similar opinion about another film we're going to talk about soon. I think that this is a 1 nomination or a 0. And right now my gut says 0. And again, this is someone that liked it quite a bit. I love the ending of that movie. It's one of my favorite endings of the year so far. It's very, it's very haunting. Yeah, there are a lot of haunting things about that film. Okay. And next, let's talk about...
All right, so let's start digging into the films that I think most people haven't seen. Maybe there's a few here that some of you have caught up with already. But let's start talking about the biggest films that people haven't seen that are being pegged as favorites.
Right. The biggest film that we saw a couple of weeks ago was HAMNET from Chloe Zhao. We saw it at a special screening. I will say I adore Chloe Zhao as a filmmaker, as a person. She's so inspiring to me. I think she's a master filmmaker. I think her last film, Nomadland, was a masterpiece. I will say that I liked HAMNET, but I don't think it's her strongest work. I think that, the film is emotionally raw. I think that the film still has Chloe Zhao's intimate aesthetic, her soulful aesthetic, which really, I think, brings a lot to the piece. I think there's a lot of elegant restraint in the film. I think it has really good performances. I thought Jessie Buckley was fucking fantastic. Her best performance yet. A surefire nominee, a surefire winner in my eyes, 100%. And she was a huge highlight for me, as I'm sure she will be for many people. I thought the little kid was very good and very, very touching. I think Paul Mescal does a good job. But after seeing the film, and we'll get into your impression of it, after seeing the film, I will say to you all right now that I feel very confident that it will not beat One Battle After Another for Best Picture. If this is One Battle's biggest competition, and I think it will be, I feel very, very confident that One Battle will win that battle. And after seeing the film, the first thing I thought of was, that's it. One Battle is the Best Picture winner of the year. And One Battle, I believe, will win Best Picture and Best Director and Best Screenplay. I think Paul Thomas Anderson walks out of this award season getting 3 Oscars minimum. And there's just, this film is going to have its fans. It's going to be critically acclaimed, but I don't think it will be able to eclipse the strength, the momentum, and the quality of PTA's latest.
I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think Chloe Zhao is a brilliant filmmaker. This film is not bad, but I'm not very passionate about it. And I don't know how many people will be passionate about it.
Oh, I think so. I think people will be passionate about it for sure. I mean, I'm not saying voters, but the general public, I do think will like it quite a bit.
I think that's important because the only way that I think it can beat one battle after another is if it makes 40 to 50 million bucks at the box office. Other than that, I think it won't be able to be competitive against it. I think this is a film that, at least to me, felt like it was largely overstated in terms of its impact. I think Jesse Buckley's phenomenal in it. I think Paul Mescal did not necessarily give a very specific William Shakespeare or a specific take on it. I thought it was too broad. And I do wonder if that's going to affect his chances, along with him being already a nominee in for the lead actor category previously.
Interestingly enough, Shakespeare doesn't do well in these acting categories.
He does not, and that's very interesting. And so I would look out for that.
We mean Shakespeare, the
character.
The character.
Yeah, as Joseph Fiennes. And then the other thing is, so for example, like I can't tell you right now that I'm sold on it being a surefire costume nominee or a surefire production design nominee.
I wanted to get into that.
And if it does like end up getting nominated there, it's very much because it's a Best Picture nominee. It's sort of like someone's filling out their ballot. What am I going to put? Well, I saw Hamnet. It's a Best Picture movie. I cried, so I'm putting that, as opposed to, for example, Sinners, which is going to be placed extremely high on those ballots because, as a production designer, it's some of the work that I remember most.
Right.
And it just so happens that I'm also placing it in Best Picture. You know what I mean?
I think that's a really good point that I'll just jump off really quick, is that even though I'm positive as everyone is that it'll get nominated for Best Picture, and again, I feel pretty confident that it will not win, when you start to, after you've seen the film, kind of decipher what the nominations are going to be, it's a little bit, I think, on the lower end for me than what I think people are thinking or saying. So it's certainly a film that will compete for Best Picture, and it will get nominated, I believe, for Adapted Screenplay. I do think Paul Mescal will get nominated for sure. I think Jesse Buckley is absolutely winning. And I think the film will get nominated for, this is where it gets tricky. I think the film will get nominated for cinematography, but it's not one of the top in the category. Whereas before I had seen the movie, I thought Lucas Zaw was going to be at the very top. I think he gets this nomination because he hasn't got it in yet, and because it's a Best Picture nominee.
I don't think he's even gotten it for color yet, to be honest. And like he should have gotten the color for Zone of Interest, but they snubbed him.
Right. Actually, my apologies. Of course, he's been nominated for Ida and for Cold War, but I think he has the esteem to get into the category, but I don't think he'll win the category. I think he's a fourth or fifth in that list. I agree. I don't know that I see the film as a slam dunk at all for costume or for production design.
You know what's interesting when you said that about cinematography is that I was thinking in my mind, it's like sort of a fourth or fifth effort what you see on the screen.
Well, I mean, it looks beautiful to me.
Certainly.
But it
doesn't compete with the other things that he's made.
Right.
And I would argue that between the two films that I remember seeing of his in color, I'm more impressed with The Zone of Interest.
Right.
But this was very good too. I'm not knocking it at all. But what I am saying is, if he has an edge, again, the same way for production and costume design, if they have an edge in that category, it's because people liked it in Best Picture. And so the edge of Lucas Zaal in this category is that he's a veteran and he's been nominated twice already, versus the DP for Sinners, the DP for One Battle. They have not been nominated yet.
Right.
And so, again, just that idea that Lucas Zaal will get in, the work is good, the work is solid, but he's going to get in very much because he just so happens to be Lucas Zaal, who has a tremendous reputation already,
Right. Exactly. And so again, I'm not sure that I see costume and production design being a slam dunk at all. Not that they're poorly done, they're done well, but they're not typically what they go for. They're
not a standout. Yeah,
exactly. The costume design doesn't change very much. And the production design is very subtle and a lot of open spaces. So it's not typically what they go for. I do think that they'll finally welcome Max Richter into the original score category.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm a huge Max Richter fan. I adore his music. I listen to it nonstop all the time. It really inspires me and influences me creatively. So I think that he'll finally get a nomination. But I also think that his very renowned piece,
features in the film.
Features very heavily in the film, and in a pivotal moment in the film. I do wonder if that's going to hurt it getting nominated. I think someone after the film confirmed that shouldn't be a reason. That shouldn't be something that disqualifies.
It won't
the
be
film.
a factor, which is a shame because it's not necessarily used any less, charged or any less, prominently than it was in Arrival, and they sort of canceled that nomination. So it is. I agree with you. That's kind of weird that it's not disqualified and it can compete still.
And then this will be the biggest take that I think you and I will say that I think might surprise quite a few people. But after seeing the film, I think you and I feel pretty confident that Chloe Zhao will be snubbed for Best Director, which I know sounds crazy saying that, and maybe we're going to eat our words. But if we don't, you heard it here first. And that's because, as you all probably know, the director's branch is very picky, very selective, and they're also very selective about who they let in and how soon after their last nomination. That's true for a lot of categories, but that's especially true for Best Director. Chloe Zhao has only made one film in between Nomadland and HAMNET, and that was Eternals, which wasn't received well, even though I quite like it. And so I just don't think, that there's enough work in between that director's going to say, well, let's nominate her again so soon. Unfortunately, some of the gender politics come in here because, they're not great at nominating female filmmakers anyway. They're also on a trend of trying to welcome as many new filmmakers as they possibly can. And in this case, they already have a surefire veteran getting in who's yet to win an Oscar, Paul Thomas Anderson. The great PTA. Everyone else kind of is new. Joachim Trier, Jafar Panahi, Ryan Coogler. So it's sort of like finally welcoming them into the club. I just don't think that the piece is strong enough to convince them or persuade them to give her a nomination so soon after Nomadland. And again, it's a nomination that she ended up winning. It's a category she won, Best Director. So I think all those things are going to come into play, and she will miss out in the Best Director category for a new director that hasn't been recognized by the branch yet, that they're eager to recognize for whatever reason. And that contender is most likely going to be Josh Safdie. And maybe we'll get into this right now, in that, number one, if Timothée Chalamet stands to win the Best Director award, the Best Actor award, it's very rare to have a Best Actor winner in the modern age that did not have a Best Director nomination for a film that didn't have a Best Director nomination. That's number one. And number two, as we looked at the research here, A24 does really well in this Best Director category. So when they have a horse for Best Director, and it's a big horse, and if Timothée Chalamet is going to win Best Actor, then that is a big horse for A24. They shouldn't miss this category. They shouldn't miss Best Director.
This goes all the way back to Lenny Abrahamson, who got in for Room without hardly any precursors or anyone thinking that he would. So I think that's a significant factor. And I think Chloe Zhao is in that position where she could easily be leapfrogged. I don't think it's a sure thing, but after seeing the film, certainly that's something that I think about. I think it's interesting that you enjoyed the film, and I feel that the film is less than the sum of its parts. And we're sort of thinking the same way here in terms of, just the standing that people are giving it right now. More established pundits and critics, I think, is overblown. For example, I was always pegging Alfonso Goncalves, the fantastic film editor, getting in for this film. He's never been nominated. He's extraordinary, and he's, you're going to recognize him from his work on True Detective, Carol, but I didn't think that the editing in this film was going to resonate very much with voters. I don't see it getting an editing nomination.
I differ. I do see it getting an editing nomination because I do think it's going to end up being One Battle's biggest competitor at the end of the day, and so I don't see a real horse race or a perceived horse race unless it gets an editing nomination. So just based on its number 2 status, it's going to get a Best Editing nomination, in my opinion.
But that's my point, is that it feels like a bunch of the nominations that it's going to get is due to its being the number 2 movie because it won the TIFF award, as opposed to, had one battle after another, not ever been the number one movie, there's enough editing there for an editor to be, for it to be striking work for an editor.
Mm-hmm.
There's enough cinematography work for it to strike, the cinematographer's branch. The same thing with the sound work and the score work. And this is not that. This is a little bit more like, I'm supposed to put this movie in Best Picture, and maybe some people, really liked it enough to be number one or number two, but then everything, follows down from that. It's sort of like, sort of like a triangle. You get the biggest nomination and the other ones follow, as opposed to what I think One Battle is, which is the reverse triangle, right? Which is you get a bunch of the little nominations first, and then before you realize it, you realize it's been nominated for so many awards that it's a Best Picture nominee. Sort of like Frankenstein that we were sort of saying, where Frankenstein, if it's a production design nominee and a costume design nominee and a cinematography nominee and a score nominee and a screenplay nominee, then it's kind of a Best Picture nominee.
Right.
I think the HAMNET kind of works the opposite way. And so beyond the editing thing, I'll say something controversial. I don't really expect Paul Mescal to be nominated for this. I think he's had a tremendous year, but I think that this is the nomination he gets for being snubbed for After Sun, but he got in for After Sun. And so I don't see Paul Mescal at his young age, at this stage in his career. He's about to just blow up into bigger projects. He's just coming off Gladiator. He's going to be in The Beatles, I think. And so I don't think that Paul Mescal gets his second nomination 3 years after Sun in a supporting category for this take on William Shakespeare.
I think we've talked about this. We differ. I think Paul Mescal will definitely get nominated. I think it's an actor, again, that they have their eye on, that they're eager to nominate several times in the future. I think it helps that it's a category shift. We've talked about that several times on our podcast, how important it is to have a category shift when you're going to, have a repeat nomination, especially so soon. And I think it really helps that he's playing William Shakespeare. So we talked about this as well, that these acting categories should have a real life figure representation in the nominees. And so you have one that we are pegging on for Best Actress. You have one that we're pegging for Best Actor, and he's really the best shot for Best Supporting Actor for William Shakespeare. And so, yeah, I don't see him missing at all, but I definitely do not see him winning. I think before I thought that might be a horse race between Stellan Skarsgård and Paul Mescal. Now I firmly think this is Stellan Skarsgård's to win, full stop, all the way. So yeah, we differ there. Yeah.
I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think that this is going to survive on, the loyalties of the British contingent and, the people who do like it and respond to it very well. But in my eyes, I think this is a movie that maybe gets 7, and I can see it going lower.
I think that it's a 7er also. I think it gets 7 as well. I think it's picture, 2 acting, screenplay, that's 4.
Right.
Score, that's 5, 2 more.
Yeah. And I mean, it could get nominated for something like production design or costume design, but it would only be nominated because they saw it because it's a Best Picture movie and because they couldn't think of someone else to recognize.
Right.
And so I think that's where we're at with HAMNET. I will say this. Everything changes if it makes 40 to 50 million at the box office. If it can make the same amount of money that Conclave made, everything changes. Because there was this other narrative, beyond the Paul Thomas Anderson finally winning one, which is Focus Features finally winning Best Picture.
Right.
And in my opinion, this film just falls below the Brokeback Mountains and the Tars in terms of how excellent the films are. And it's a little bit more like Belfast, right? And can it sort of be the sentimental counterpart to win Best Picture?
Yeah,
my gut says no.
I would definitely not put it on par with Belfast.
It's better. No, it's certainly better.
I did not like Belfast.
Right.
For me, it's a very good Focus Features film. It's a good Chloe Zhao film. It's just not the best film of the year.
Yeah, I don't think it's the one that Focus Features should be putting on their banner. I think there's Brokeback Mountain, there's Tar, there's Lost in Translation. HAMNET is a solid film.
Right.
And I think that's what, period. Period for me.
Okay.
Well, I think the next movie to talk about is also one that we were very fortunate to see, which is The Testament of Anne Lee, right? Hasn't been screened very widely. It just really got a teaser the other day.
Yeah.
I think their promotion has been very, very quiet.
I'm actually pretty happy that we got to see it before the teaser.
Yeah.
I love experiencing a film before you see any footage of it whatsoever.
Yeah, you know what? What's funny is that speaking of Hamnet, I haven't even seen the new trailer for Hamnet because people said to avoid it if you hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah, I did.
Should people avoid the teaser for Ann Lee if they haven't?
No,
I don't think so, right?
No, but I do think it gives you. I think it was a good teaser, and I think it gives you a nice, very quick impression of what you're going to get into.
Okay. So we screened Ann Lee. It's a lot of movie. There's a bunch of movie cramped into that film.
I will say.
What'd you think?
I'll say that to me, it's one of my favorite films of the year. I think I was flabbergasted. I was astounded by the boldness and the vision. It was a staggering vision. It was at times radiant. It was ravishing. It was surprising. You really see the soul of a filmmaker on it. Their creativity, their brilliance, their boldness. And it was just a really, just an incredible experience. It was searing. There's a ferocious energy to it. It's also strange. It's at times kind of surreal. It's thrilling. It's what you said. It's jam packed, and it's one of those experiences where I feel like you really get your money's worth because there's just so much there to unpack and to experience. I'll say, as someone that clearly loved it, well, before I get into that, what did you think?
I love it. I mean, I think we're like yin and yang right now. I really admired the movie. I prefer the movie to Hamnet. I think Ann Lee is better. It's a little overwhelming. I think
I love that about it.
And I think that's part of the point, and I can appreciate that. I didn't like the script for the first half, and I liked the script for the second half. I think it could have been written better. It could have been a more complete script, a more complete screenplay. But I do think it ends, incredibly powerful. And I think that second half of the movie, I was really taken with it.
I agree with you. The ending is incredible. I'll say that I think Amanda Seyfried is incredible in this movie. I think it's one of her finest performances. And I think you and I felt very similar that when we were done here after watching this film, we didn't see how Amanda Seyfried doesn't get a Best Actress nomination out of this. I will say that
even though it's the kind of performance that kind of like, and we'll reference this, I think, as we discuss it, kind of like Spencer, she can miss the SAG. She may miss the SAG.
Right, 100%. No, I expect her to miss the SAG.
Yeah, she just probably will not miss the Oscar.
Because just, if you tune into the film, you're just going to admire so much of what's there, the craft, the quality. Even it's one of those performances where I feel like even if you dislike the film, you're just going to admire the performance at the center. But I'll also say, go ahead.
Well, no, what I was going to say was we had sort of discussed, I had alluded to this after we had seen it, which is one thing that I really liked about the film is that it's kind of an unorthodox musical in the sense that it's not Wicked at all, or Emilia Perez, or Les Miserables, or Chicago. To me, something that I really loved about the piece is that it reminds me of a lot of the musicals that were going on in the 70s, which were very counterculture. And it's almost like, how can you make this a musical? But then you have Hair, right? And Finian's Rainbow is also great. And even something like 1776, which is another musical that I kind of like. But this sort of melding between politics and a lens on society, and these bigger overarching themes, sort of infusing that with music. That's what it sort of reminded me of. And I kind of loved that about it.
I also say that for me, the biggest takeaway for me was just how compassionate the film is, and how the magnitude of compassion that it has for its subject and the movement that it's chronicling, to me, was really hard to describe, but the best word I can use is inspiring. It was very inspiring to me. And it really was very beautiful to behold, that sort of sacred compassion and empathy that she had for her subject.
Mona.
Yeah, Mona Fastfold. And what, you know, the compassion that she has towards Ann Lee and towards this movement, you know, it was just really beautiful to see, and it really touched me. Really, it really touched me.
I mean, I will say this, now that we've said that, is the movie ended and there was no standing ovation
100%.
or no, you know, applause ringing through the theater. Everyone was, I think, in thought.
I will say, I 100% agree with you. I think that this is going to be, without a doubt, a polarizing film. There will be people who see it and feel like I do, and like you do, and there'll be other people who see it and dislike it very much. I do not see how this film will get a huge theatrical audience. I was thinking about this before we were preparing. You know, if a film like Kiss of the Spider-Woman did so poorly, and I think that film has a lot of accessibility to it, I don't see how this film does, you know, 10 times better than Kiss of the Spider-Woman. The only difference is that, you know, this is a $10 million budget, and Kiss of the Spider-Woman is a $30 million
also
budget.
The history, maybe some history people are really going to be taken with, ooh, it's a shaker musical.
Possibly. I certainly feel that we saw it with a lot of people, and it felt like the vast majority of people there were, as you said, in thought, possibly a bit overwhelmed, you know, kind of like, okay, all right, what did I just experience? You know,
some people have mentioned
perplexed.
Some people have mentioned walkouts.
There was a couple walkouts.
We got a couple, but it wasn't anything I think
huge.
super significant.
Yeah, but
I
feel like you could feel the energy in the room was like, you know, one of, you know, being perplexed.
Yeah,
in a way.
It's a demanding film. I will say that 100%. It's a demanding. Like 100%. It has a very particular wavelength, and if you get on it, you're going to be in for one hell of a ride.
Right.
But if you're fighting it every minute, then it's just going to be a very frustrating experience.
Yeah. And so I understand the people who saw it at Venice and said that this is this year's Emilia Perez. You know, I completely disagree in the sense that this is a much better film than Emilia Perez is, but I will agree in the sense that it will polarize people. And I don't see this film amassing this fan base, you know, outside of critical acclaim and critics and cinephiles, you know, very strict cinephiles who have a, you know, wide, you know, palette, so to speak. I think general people who check it out are not going to like it.
Right.
And I will say that as great as Amanda Seyfried is in it, I think she greatly benefits from being, again, one of the very few contenders in her category to be a real life person. And like I said, you always have to presume that the Oscars are going to include a real life figure. The only times they don't is when it's literally impossible to do so. And after a Venice bow and having the critical acclaim that this film will certainly have, it will make several top 10 lists. It's making mine. Even with all of that, I do think that Amanda Seyfried benefits from the lack of real characters, real people, real figures, real historical figures in her category. And if there were better options, more accessible options, she would miss out, as great as the performance is. I think what's really helping her right now is that. And that leads me into the other thing I want to say, which is that as someone who loved the movie, I really don't see this film getting nominated for many awards. In fact, I see it getting nominated for only an Actress Award. Despite, you know, all the great things that are on there. I see it being a one nomination for Amanda Seyfried. And I don't know. You have a different opinion.
This is why I love it. I love the yin yang of it, because it's not going to make my top films of the year. I don't think the comparisons to Emilia Perez are unjust, in the sense that, again, I'm not knocking either films, in the sense that they're both very ambitious films that are extremely successful in some ways and extremely messy in other ways. So I did enjoy the film. I enjoyed Emilia Perez as well. I understand the shortcomings of it, or I feel like I see some shortcomings in each. But what's interesting here is that we're on total opposites, you know, ends of the spectrum, because after seeing the film, I thought, yes, Amanda Seyfried is undeniable. It helps that she's a previous nominee. It helps that she's a real person. But there's just too much movie in front of a voter's eyes where I can't really see it missing in a bunch of other categories. So, for example, in my opinion, yes, Amanda Seyfried will be nominated despite possibly missing a SAG. But I don't see how the film isn't a factor in costume design, production design, cinematography, score, song. So to me, this is more of a 6 nomination movie. And I really do think that if they know what they're doing, and I have every reason to doubt that they do, this is the kind of movie that Fox Searchlight, back when it was Fox Searchlight, would probably be able to get into a 10 Best Picture. You know, if there has to be 10, they would probably be able to get this in. Fox Searchlight is now Searchlight, so I don't know how capable or not they are of doing that. But there's, again, just so much movie here. And I think it's also a timely piece, and I think there's it's a conversation piece. And so if they really knew what they were doing, or if this wasn't, for example, Searchlight, and instead A24 bought this movie like they bought The Brutalist last year, I think this is a 7 to 8 nomination movie. I think you're right. I'm not saying that it's going to be anywhere near as successful with general audiences as The Brutalist. I'm not saying that at all, but I am saying that the movie is there. You just have to campaign it right. I don't think that they will, but if they do, I think it's a 6, 7, 8 nomination movie.
Again, we talked about this. That to me sounds crazy based on what I saw. And I think that things like it doing poorly at the box office, which I think will happen, because it's just not the kind of film that I think is accessible enough to enough general audiences, will have a factor, will play a factor. I think we saw a little bit of that in our screening, the sort of tepid response afterwards. And I think the crowd that we saw felt like they were excited to see what it was all about, this Venice,
Right.
stunner.
Right.
There was a very tepid reaction. And I think we saw glimpses of that at the actual Venice Film Festival ceremony, where it failed to win a single thing. And after seeing the movie, again, there's a lot of movie here. So I have a hard time thinking that it couldn't place anywhere. And that one award, it was very easy for it to win, was the Best Actress Award.
No, I can't win that. I mean, I think it's just too American still.
I don't know. Alexander Payne is a jury head. So, yes, I think that she could have won Best Actress. I think she was the favorite to win Best Actress. I think the fact that the film walked out empty-handed, I think just lends further fodder to this idea that, yeah, this is going to be a hard movie for a lot of people to love. Admire, yes. Love, that's a different story. And I also think it doesn't help that, the filmmakers, the collaborators on the piece have yet to be nominated. There's not a lot of known, filmmakers that have been nominated or have been very close to getting nominated in, for example, categories like costume design or production design. I think that hurts. I think a film, for example, that was able to do something like that was Poor Things, where it got, a costume designer that hadn't been there before and a production designer all in one go. That was a Best Picture nominee. And I'm pegging this to not be able to be a Best Picture nominee. But that also brings me to this other thing that I was thinking about, which is this film reminds me a lot of Jackie in a way, which is we wrote
a piece on that.
Right. Which was also a Fox Searchlight pick that they acquired out of Venice, even though that actually won something at Venice. And that if you see Jackie and you are able to appreciate the amount of skill and filmmaking, the artistry in that movie, I remember seeing that movie and thinking, how the hell is this not a surefire Best Picture nominee? I think that film is amazing. That film is incredible.
Right.
And it walked out with 3 nominations.
Right.
And Searchlight got snubbed that year completely from a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah.
And so I feel a similar energy here. People who saw Jackie, we saw it at the New York Film Festival. There were a lot of people who were very iffy about it. They didn't love it, and that's a film that was also very bold in its approach and, had a very artistic sort of vision for a biopic about Jackie Kennedy. People were expecting something else completely. So it's, this film reminds me a lot of that. And I think it stands to repeat the same sort of destiny. A lot of film championed by critics, loved by critics, many top 10 lists, many accolades, But at the end, when it comes to the voting body, they're just going to admire it more than they love it. And the place where it can really make its mark is such a complicated and girthy category like Best Actress.
I think that's a fair comparison. I absolutely believe that's a fair comparison, comparing it to Jackie, both in the film it is and what kind of potential it has with Oscar voters. I guess I'm just seeing a lack of competition this year that was not around in 2016 when Jackie missed. Maybe I'm responding to that. I agree. I would have seen Jackie and I would have thought it was a 6 nominee movie,
Right.
7 nominee movie, and it clearly wasn't. Even though again it had all the potential to be. So it could very well end up the way that you're saying, but just in my gut, I find it difficult to believe that a costume designer or a production designer is going to have to consider HAMNET and the Testament of Anne Lee and would ever favor HAMNET. I do find difficulty at the same. I mean, even the cinematographer, who, again, Lucas Zhao has a tremendous reputation and does excellent work here. The whole 70 millimeter of it all, the whole the whole VistaVision of it all for Anne Lee, I think makes it extremely competitive. That's what I think, but we'll see what happens.
I don't know. I guess I disagree. I feel like this film exists in the realm of like Brady Corbet's, Vox Lux, and Brady Corbet's, Child of a Leader. I haven't seen Mona Fastvold's last film,
The World to Come.
The World to Come, but it's certainly one of those, pieces that is very, again, just bold, experimental in its approach. And, there's a reason why The Brutalist got in and those other films by Brady Corbet didn't. And I think it doesn't help that she was just there, that she got nominated, Mona Fastvold, for screenplay. So it's sort of like, I think there will be a feeling from voters, as is often the case, after you've just been nominated, do I really need to nominate them so soon after just last year? And that's true for a lot of contenders this year.
Yeah. We'll find out how that happens. I'm going to be very curious to see what the reception is when more people see it here in the U.S. I think the next one we'll talk about is a little bit of a sleeper, which we both kind of saw. And here we're kind of on the same, we're in the same wavelength.
Yeah.
So we saw Nuremberg, which did pretty well at the box office, I have to say.
It's doing well.
I mean, really modestly budgeted. Got a great opening crowd. We actually saw it with 2 different crowds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And both of our crowds were really into it, and very much an adult audience that was excited to watch an adult historical drama on screen and really enjoyed the film
this subject matter.
About this serious subject matter, historical subject matter.
I will say, yeah, exactly. The film, in my opinion, is very flawed. It's not a film that I love by any stretch of the imagination. I think there's a lot of problems. But when it comes to the predicting game, it's not really about what movies you love or you don't. It's about seeing the bigger picture. And the bigger picture here is that this film is doing well. And it's doing well in an environment where all the films are falling like flies.
Yeah, you're talking about exactly.
Yeah, so it helps that it's modestly budgeted, but it's no small feat that it's doing well and that it has good word of mouth and that people are coming out of the film really enjoying it and liking it and being moved by it. Don't sleep on that. That matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's about a topic that is very Oscar friendly. It stars actors that are very that the Academy knows and respects.
Oscar winners.
So
Sony Picture Classics.
Sony Picture Classics knows how to campaign their shit. They know how to get their movie in front of voters' eyes. And a lot of the people that we saw the film with and that are enjoying the film are kind of, the voting body of the Academy.
Yeah.
Older.
Very
very familiar with that historical moment.
They like a more conventional film. They don't like an Anne Lee. They like a conventional film, well told in a very traditional way that's, very Hollywood. Right.
And so despite my several issues with the film, again, I wasn't a big fan of it. And critically, it's very borderline. It's like a 61 on Metacritic. In this kind of competition where we're considering films like The Testament of Anne Lee and Bugonia, which I think are going to stand to be very polarizing, films like Avatar and Wicked that have already
populist films.
Yeah, populist films that have already been there before,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still unsure how much voters are eager to welcome them back so soon. Films like Weapons, which I think is surging, but it's also really not their cup of tea.
Maybe too edgy.
Yeah, not really what they typically go for. Surprises that people haven't really picked up on yet, like the voice of Hin Rajab, which has all the ingredients to get in, but will Watermelon Pictures be able to pull that huge feat? You know, when you look at the field, you have to start wondering if a well-liked film by Sony Picture Classics about this topic can't muster a nomination. In the same way that maybe a movie like September 5th was very damn close to doing it.
Yeah.
It ended up only getting a screenplay nomination, but it was close to getting a Best Picture nomination. And I think this film has the benefit that it's being more watched than that film was, and it's being more... you know, September 5th had some complications with that, you know, the Israel and Palestine conflict that was at a fever pitch.
Right.
You know, this film, you know, has a lot of timely themes, you know, has some exploration of, you know, authoritarianism,
immigration, anti-Semitism.
So there's just a lot there that I think these audience members are responding to.
Right.
And, you know, I just got the feeling from watching it that if certain kinds of voters, you put them in front of that movie, they're going to respond very positively, and they're going to be eager to put it on their ballots.
Like the audiences that we saw with. So not only is it tackling that difficult subject matter, and not only is it, you know, a historical piece that is, you know, more timely than ever, the idea of, you know, people in power being held accountable across the world, but certainly in the U.S., audiences are enjoying watching a film that, you know, tackles serious material. And that's something that I think the industry is genuinely going to be excited about.
Yeah, that's no small feat.
Because that doesn't happen anymore. And so, like, we were talking about it, like, you know, September 5th, something that I think didn't help was that as great as a movie as it is, it's also a very small, intimate movie that I'm not sure how many eyes actually got in front of it. You know, there are major audiences watching this film right now. I think it's definitely going to get nominated for Producers Guild nomination at PGA.
It's definitely. I think it'll definitely get nominated for a Globe drama.
Yeah, I mean, so like I do think the stars will align for it. And then, you know, the other thing about it, I think, is not only is the talent on screen familiar to voters, but I also think that this film does a good job of sort of bridging, you know, American voters and international voters, right? I mean, European voters, I think, are going to enjoy the film and appreciate sort of the Hollywood retelling of this, but it's a subject matter that's important to them too.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
The Nuremberg trials.
Right.
And so I think that's going to help. It has that international appeal, even if it's not international co-production.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What did you feel about the quality of the movie? Are you like me?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's an uneven movie, and there are things. You know what? I think.
Yeah, it's very sloppy.
I think the biggest criticism I had of the movie, and the biggest compliment I had of the movie, I told you about after I had seen it, which is this movie could have been great. Like the story, the actual story, and the history that this is based on could have been an amazing movie. I just don't think they got the right director, and I think the script can be sharper. For example, you loved Russell Crowe in it.
Yeah,
I think I would have preferred a German actor.
I think Russell Crowe was the strongest performance in the piece, personally.
Right, and I loved Michael Shannon in it. Right. And so I'm not to say that Rami Malek did a bad job, but I also feel like his character could have had more depth, like especially for where the film ends. I just feel like that's my big takeaway from the film is it's not bad. I get why people are liking it. I don't dislike it. There are things to enjoy about it. And certainly the history of it is extremely compelling.
Right.
The historic parallels to the moment we're living in is extremely compelling. That said, my only knock is, you give this movie to Ridley Scott, and Ridley Scott could be, you know, he could finally win Best Director. Technically,
right. I think it's pretty poor in my opinion, but again, I can't avoid that it just has a lot of the right ingredients, and that it's doing well.
Yeah.
So
don't sleep on it.
Right? Do I feel positive that it gets signed for Best Picture? No, I don't. I'm not sure you do either. But I think people are sleeping on it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that it's a bigger contender than some people think.
I think we had talked about it also, like, what are they going to prefer? A movie that has done well with audiences, that's about a serious topic, that's making some money, that isn't, completely being trashed by critics either, that has some historic significance, and is also from a different studio,
Right.
or doubling and tripling nominations for Neon and Warner Brothers and Focus.
That's
the other
that's
element.
the other problem, that people are coming up with lists that give Netflix 2 nominations, that give
Focus
Warner
2.
Brothers 2 nominations, that give Focus Features 2 nominations, and that's not the way these things pan out. I mean, I certainly think it's a kind of year where a studio or two will double up and get more than one movie in, but I don't expect 4 or 3 studios to get 2 movies in. It's just not the way things pan out.
Yeah.
We need some new blood here.
Right.
We need some new studios here. And so when you look at it that way, you don't have that many, primed contenders. You take out Netflix, you take out Warner Brothers, you take out, Focus Features, you're left with a smaller pile of films. You're left with Avatar, Disney.
Yeah.
You're left with Nuremberg. Just a smaller group of films.
Yeah,
and so there's a really good chance that we end up with at least 1 or 2 different studios getting into this pile.
Yeah, and I think right now that Nuremberg stands a great chance for those 2 awards you mentioned. I think adapted screenplay, like I said,
Right.
I can see Bugonia going for 1 nomination, 5, or I can see it going for 0. I do think people are going to have an issue with that third act, and Nuremberg is solid enough as a script and as a piece of history. I made the comment to you, which again, people who have, this is their job and this is their profession, they have decided to campaign Russell Crowe for lead. I thought it was a supporting performance. I don't think it's a lead performance. I think the lead performance is Rami, and they made a tremendous mistake by not having Russell in supporting. He would have gotten in there without a doubt, in my opinion.
I think he would have gone into supporting. I did see him, though, as a lead, personally.
From a screen time perspective, to me, he is the supporting performance. That said, I saw the film and I said, I don't know if Michael Shannon can miss for this, because again, he has so many great parts that are emblematic to sort of the theme that they want to drive across to audiences. And Michael Shannon is such a respected actor. Michael Shannon is the kind of actor who will get in with very little support for any of his performances, whether it's Revolutionary Road, Nocturnal Animals. He doesn't need a whole hell of a lot of nominations precursors to crack that top 5. And in this year's top 5, where we said William Shakespeare is the real guy, I would not be surprised if the real guy is Michael Shannon. And had they been smart enough to put Russell Crowe in supporting, the real guy would have definitely been Russell Crowe, who has not been there since
A Beautiful Mind.
A Beautiful Mind, and he should have been there technically for Cinderella Man. It's been 20 years now.
Right. So, I guess we disagree there. I don't see Michael Shannon getting in for this. I think that Russell Crowe has the baitiest role. And I think you're right. In terms of screen time, he might not come across as the lead, but I think that in terms of presence and in terms of sort of being the sort of cornerstone of this hurricane, I think that's why I think he feels like a lead. I wasn't crazy about Rami Malek's performance in it personally.
The character's not great. I mean, the actual real person sounds like fantastic material.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure. I think acting can be on the table, but we have to see how that develops. I think it's by no means a sure bet for acting. And I think if someone gets in, it's Russell Crowe. But I do think watch out for a Best Picture, Best Screenplay scenario here, where gets into that 10th spot and steals a screenplay and picture nomination.
Especially if people keep watching it. Yeah. Especially like into Thanksgiving. Like if it keeps making money, definitely everyone is sleeping on this movie now. We're going to go ahead and say it first. You should not be sleeping on this movie. And this movie could very well end up rounding out the top 10.
Right. And I think that would make me want to mention this other film that you and I have been a little bit more positive about than we were previously. And I think people are maybe starting to get on this train, but at the same time, not enough people. And that's that. What if Train Dreams is a bigger movie here to place in Best Picture? I know we just finished saying that we don't like studios doubling up. I don't. And I firmly think that Netflix thinks their big push is Frankenstein and it has everything it needs to get 9 for Best Picture. But what if, again, I'm trying to wonder, and you said a very interesting thing the other day. You said, what is the Independent Spirit Award winner in this list?
Right.
It's not One Battle. and it's not
Right. Doesn't qualify.
Right. It's
Marty
not
Supreme doesn't qualify.
It's not Marty Supreme. It's probably not HAMNET because I don't think it has I think it's a bigger budget.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's going to qualify.
Right.
But even if it did, I'm not sure it would win.
No, yeah, I think it would definitely win if it was.
If it qualified?
Yeah, but I don't think it does. I think it's in the upper 35 range.
The idea that an Independent Spirit Award can go to producers, Steven Spielberg and Sam Mendes,
That's
is
weird.
kind of out of this world.
That's why I think it's not going to qualify. Sinners is not going to do it. Wicked is certainly not going to do it.
If I had legs, we could do it, but it's not going to get anywhere near Best Picture.
Right. Frankenstein's not going to do it. It was just an accident, doesn't count near the sentimental value. Because
Nuremberg could do it. Nuremberg is, made modestly enough.
I guess,
but there's no way that they're gonna. There's no way.
So when you start looking at that, you start to wonder. Listen, what in this hypothetical Best Picture list? What is the independent spirit vote? And if we look at it that way, one of the things that we were using to come up with an answer to that is, okay, well, who got nominated for the Gotham? What is the Independent Spirit movie that got nominated at the Gotham? Because we would figure that the Independent Spirit Award winner for Best Feature would at least show up at the Gotham Best Picture, especially if there are 10 spots.
In theory.
And if you looked at that and you took out movies like Bugonia and One Battle, films that can't compete because they don't qualify, you're left with very, very tiny films like East of Wall and Familiar Touch. Lurker.
Some of which are first films, by the way. So.
Or Testament of Van Lee, and we've just discussed, how difficult of a sell that's going to be for Best Picture. You're left with two movies. You're left with Sorry Baby and Train Dreams. I know people might be tempted to say, Sorry Baby, we saw it at Sundance. By now, most of you have probably seen it. It's just not their thing. It's very stripped. I think...
For the Oscars?
For the Oscars.
Oh, there's no way. Unfortunately.
Right.
Unfortunately, it just doesn't have the support.
Right. We like that movie. And you're really... If you take out Sorry Baby, you're left with Train Dreams. And here's a movie that critics really like. Mm-hmm. People who are watching it really like it. We saw it with a crowd that really liked it. Mm-hmm. It's based on a celebrated novel from a celebrated writer. Mm-hmm. It's from the team of Sing Sing that missed out on Best Picture last year. Mm-hmm. So this is sort of like a possible makeup nomination for Sing Sing, which technically should have been nominated for Best Picture because it got 3 nominations, got more nominations than the Nickel Boys. So they like that team. And again, it's well received. It has the source material. And in a way, it's a very Terrence Malick-like vehicle, but it's a little bit more accessible than a Terrence Malick.
More accessible.
Right, than a Terrence Malick film. Mm-hmm. Terrence Malick is my favorite filmmaker, and we're going to get into this in a little bit. I was okay with the movie. I like it quite a bit, but I don't love it like some people do. I think you really loved it.
Yeah, I did.
But I really feel like this film has the ability to connect with audiences and with voters, and that it has kind of everything it needs as well, like Nuremberg, except it's more critically acclaimed, to surprise here. Do I think that Netflix is going to get 2 films in? Possibly not, but do I think that of their slate, the film to really watch out for is this film over something like Jay Kelly, which is just, kind of, has only okay critics. It's about something that they tend to like, and they nominate often, films about themselves and the industry. But I think there's also a shift happening where maybe they're a little bit more, prone to, kind of been there, done that with that kind of theme. Mm-hmm. That a movie like this is sort of soft-spoken and lyrical and poignant and accessible enough to speak to enough people to place it high on their ballots.
I mean, I completely agree. I adored the film, and we were lucky enough to see it on a big screen, which we recommend anyone who has the opportunity to do so. I think to me, the only thing that's really hurting this film is technically that it's Netflix, and they're just so packed with bigger movies. But there's no doubt in my mind from what I've seen thus far, and again, I haven't seen Jay Kelly, that this is the best movie that Netflix has on their roster. It's just also the quietest film. But I also kind of mentioned to you, like, are we maybe on the cusp of seeing this trend of having this year sort of really mirror a lot of last year, in the sense that, like, you have a lot of narratives and a lot of stories and a lot of personalities and artists coming right from last year into possibly this year, and maybe getting similar traction or traction or nominations that complement what they got last year. And so, for example, you're right. These filmmakers and this director, Clint Bentley, you know, he's part of the team that worked with Greg Quadar on Sing Sing. They should have been in Best Picture. And so is that maybe going to help them factor into maybe getting into that top 10 this year?
Right.
Again, you have the whole Timothée Chalamet thing, which is whatever he wins, if he wins this year, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that it has everything to do with the fact that he came incredibly close for playing Bob Dylan, not even a whole year ago.
Yeah.
You have Elle Fanning, who could maybe get in this year. And it has everything to do with just the career she's built up and the fact that she didn't get in last year for a complete unknown. You have the whole Wicked movie. You have Mona Fastfold and Brady Corbet there again. And so there's this trend. Are the Oscars going to want to say, I don't want to nominate anyone from last year or just as little as possible? Or are they going to say, you know, I'm a big fan of what they did last year and they're sort of just proving me right in terms of I just like what they're doing and I should have done these things last year and I didn't do it. And so now it's my chance to sort of correct myself for not having done them.
Right. And
so I think Train Dreams may be able to do that. We also talk about this idea about, I think after seeing it, I think it's a surefire screenplay nominee. I thought it was a surefire cinematography nominee. To me, the only film from Netflix besides Nouvelle Vague, which is, you know, shot monochromatically in black and white and even on film, other than that, the best looking film that Netflix has is really Train Dreams. Mm. And so if what we're saying is that whoever Netflix gets into cinematography is their best picture nominee, I really do feel like Train Dreams is the best shot they have at cinematography. It doesn't help that the cinematographer, for example, for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein,
just got nominated.
He just got nominated. He's already been nominated twice. Right. Is he really a cinematographer that the branch is going to feel is at a caliber to have nominated 3 times?
Right.
You know, there are I think Greg Fraser's around the 3 number. He might be close to the 3 number, maybe a little bit more. But so are they really going to think, you know, that this cinematographer is at that level already?
Right.
And so I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder if, you know, everyone thinks like we did that the cinematography nominee for Netflix that, you know, has always made it into Best Picture was Frankenstein. Maybe it's actually Train Dreams.
Exactly. And one thing we did agree on, which was kind of shocking and surprising because of, you know, everything we had sort of anticipated before having seen it. We both kind of agree that Joel Edgerton is fantastic in the film, but he probably will not factor in because it's just too internalized of a performance, right?
I mean, I did feel that way after seeing it. I think this is the kind of film that's going to speak more to, you know, writers, for example, some techs, some craftsmen, more than actors. You know, I think there's a lot of, as you were saying, internalness to the piece that I think is not what the actors typically go for. That being said, I think Joel Edgerton is a respected actor and a esteemed actor who has yet to be nominated. And again, we're talking about people getting a bunch of nominations and some people haven't gotten one yet.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I do think that if he were able to be in the right vehicle, even if it's not typically what they go for, that the respect for him as an actor could push him into that 5th spot. Because, you know, we'll talk about this maybe. You know, I do feel actor has 4 spots locked.
Right.
And there's really just one spot we're looking at.
Right.
And so if there is the love there for Train Dreams, he can ride that wave just based on respect, even if it's not what actors typically go for. But yeah, after seeing it, I felt like you that it's too internal, too quiet, too subdued to land for the actors.
The other thing is that, you know, whoever's campaigning it, and like we said, it is Netflix, they really need to focus their effort behind it because this is the kind of film that's quiet enough where I'm not sure it's going to crack the most popular titles on Netflix. You got to keep reminding critics how great it is, or else it's not going to. For example,
I think it'll do well with critics. Actually,
I mean,
critics lists.
It absolutely needs to. Like, it cannot miss. It kind of needs to win that Independent Spirit Award. It cannot afford. It's so quiet and so intimate of a film that it cannot afford, for example, to miss the National Board of Review. It can't afford it. You know what I mean? It really can't afford to miss Drama Picture at the Golden Globes. And so you have a lot of work to do to make sure that you get those things.
Right.
Because it is, like I said, a quiet film that audiences could easily overlook, critics get overlooked. The biggest news that it had was out of Sundance, and that is extremely old news by now.
Right. But I also will say, as much as we're looking at this possibility of, well, we need a sort of Independent Spirit Award representative in this Best Picture 10. There usually is one. And that this got the Train Dreams got the Gotham nomination, and that seems like the most likely pick. I will say that in 2021, we didn't really have one of those because the Independent Spirit pick was technically The Lost Daughter.
Yes,
which
you're
got
right.
the Gotham win and got the Independent Spirit Award win and still missed out.
Although,
but even The Lost Daughter did not go out empty-handed.
You're right. It did not go out.
It got 3 pivotal nominations.
And one would argue that between that and Venice, it should have been in that 10. They just said, I'm going to nominate Searchlight instead because Searchlight is Searchlight. At the same time, I will say that I believe Coda was an Independent Spirit Award nominee that year. And so you did have...
Was it?
I believe so. I believe so. And so you do have, I think, a little bit of overlap there. And so because the Independent Spirit Awards cannot nominate One Battle After Another or Marty Supreme, you and I are still wondering if they're going to be able to nominate HAMNET. You should see at least a little bit of overlap, and Train Dreams is still one of those films that could potentially do that.
Right.
So let's go ahead now and jump into the other Netflix movie we saw recently, which people are going to get a chance to take a look at as at the end of November, which is Knives Out, Wake Up Dead Man. Okay. What did you think?
I really liked it. I'm a big fan of the Knives Out franchise. I did think that, well, first of all, the first Knives Out was one of my absolutely favorite films of 2019. It was just such a fucking fun ride. I think it took a dip with Glass Onion, which I thought was flashier and louder and didn't really help to bring, the magic of the Knives Out franchise to the forefront. But I do think that the third installment gets closer to bringing back that magic. It's a little bit more intimate. It's a little bit smaller in scale, but more profound and deeper thematically in scale. I think visually it was rich. Again, it's such a joy to see these, amazing actors working together. The mystery was very fun. I thought that Josh O'Connor was so good in it. I thought he was, among the, best performances of the Knives Out franchise, with Ana de Armas, who I think was also great in her installment. He really stood out to me. I think he's the best performance in the piece. I loved Benoit Blanc as well. As always, Josh Brolin did a very good job, and so did Glenn Close. I think those were the MVPs. And like I said, there's, this sort of Edgar Allan Poe-esque-ness to it, really, I think, added a dimension to it that helped in bringing back that magic and made it stand out to me. I don't think it supersedes the first one for me just yet, but certainly better than Glass Onion. And I think it's a very likely nominee for screenplay, but I don't think that it will transcend that. I don't think that this film is the one that takes the Knives Out franchise into, larger territory.
Right. Because they've always sort of been pigeonholed into a screenplay movie exclusively.
Right. I don't think this is the one that becomes a Best Picture nominee and an acting nominee. People have been whispering and sort of insinuating that Glenn Close could get in, but really after seeing it, she does have a big scene, but it's very tied to the mystery, and I just don't think that I saw enough from any actor to land into an acting nomination. I think there's a reason why these films tend to be overlooked by the actors, even though they're amazing actors giving good performances, and it's just so fun to see them. But I think the ensembleness of it all, kind of makes it less attractive to single out a person, because you walk out thinking, they're of a piece, all of them, in a way, or that you had certain favorites that other people had other favorites. So I really feel that it's a screenplay nomination only.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, and I agree in large part, but I do see possibly some larger potential depending on how it arrives. I think someone had written that this is going to be the largest release for Netflix in theaters. This makes money.
Interesting.
It becomes a different conversation. It could really launch the film into a different place. Sometimes when series or franchises close, there's a little bit more of a soft spot for them. And so I'm not going to dismiss that possibility. But, barring that, I do think it's probably a lock for screenplay. But I do think it could be competitive in a category, for example, like supporting actress. I think Glenn Close has enough material to do it. She certainly has enough esteem to do it. And if you look at that category in general, the issue that we have with that category that we've always had all year long, ever since Emily Blunt's film has sort of disappointed, is just we don't have a great winner.
Yeah.
And so in the face of not having a great winner, can we throw a bone to Glenn Close to win, who has already said kind of publicly, yeah, it bothers me that I haven't won yet.
Right.
And someone mentioned this, I think, online or something, and I completely see it. I think it's completely appropriate. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but when Ingrid Bergman won a supporting actress Oscar, I think in the 70s for Murder on the Orient Express, she did not deserve to win that Oscar. No way. There's no way. But, her being Ingrid Bergman and her being in that stage of her career really lent itself to giving her that award. And so I do think that there's certainly a play here, if you're smart, for Netflix to get in this category, because it's going to be so much easier for her to win than be nominated. So like phase 1 is very difficult. Phase 2, the win, is actually very easy. And here's the other thing is that we've talked about the idea you've brought up a bunch of times, right? Which is that...
Right. Well, I brought up that Netflix has never missed the best supporting actress category, except for, I believe, 2022, where they didn't have a lot of good contenders. That was the year that, interestingly enough, they had Glass Onion.
They had Janelle Monáe.
Right. Who they couldn't push into the supporting actress category.
Who technically, by that point, had enough of a sort of filmography to justify her inclusion there.
Yeah.
She was in Hidden Figures. She was in Moonlight. You could argue she was a scene stealer in both, and probably the bigger scene stealer in Hidden Figures, who did not get nominated.
Right. So that's an interesting stat about Netflix, but again, it did miss in 2022, so it's not impossible. And it's kind of ironic that it was also a Knives Out film. And so that's true. And I do feel that Glenn Close getting into the supporting actress category fixes a huge gaping hole in that category, which is that no one is a great winner.
Right.
And people will, if she gets into that category, she's winning, full stop, just period.
Based on her career.
100%. But I just feel very confident that she will not.
At the same time, Netflix has never really run an actor who's been nominated how many times now? 8 times. They've never run an actor who's been nominated 8 times from a Knives Out franchise. So Janelle Monáe, that would be her first nomination. Jamie Lee Curtis in 2019, first nomination. Anna de Armas, first nomination. Barring, for example, Christopher Plummer and Toni Collette, Toni Collette, Edward Norton, Christopher Plummer, Kate Hudson. Those are the only previous nominees that they had to run. And then you have Glenn Close, who they're running as a previous nominee, who's been nominated 8 times.
Right.
And so I'm saying that if anyone is going to break the rule, it would be her.
Yeah, I agree with you, but there's another element to this where I feel like they've waited this long that I think that there's a piece of them that might feel like, am I really going to give it to her for a Knives Out film?
Yeah.
You know, which, as good as she is, and she's very good, I'm not sure that I think a majority of voters are going to feel it's one of her top 5 best performances.
I certainly don't feel that way.
Right, right. So it's sort of like I'm thinking they might feel like I can give it to her for something even better because she's that good.
I mean, let's hope so.
Right? Yeah, or they're just going to stick her with an honorary Oscar.
They may feel like it may be too much of a gamble. Or stick her with an honorary Oscar. I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now, again, I could be wrong. And again, I'd be happy for her. Who wouldn't? But I just don't see enough there to transcend the pattern of, we don't nominate Knives Out ensembles.
The other one that I would sort of mention here, just sort of like as a footnote, is Josh O'Connor is great in this movie.
Yeah.
And Josh O'Connor, it should be a surprise to no one, he's had an amazing year.
Right.
Are they running him lead or supporting?
Supporting.
I think there's room in the category. I think if we're saying
I don't think there's that much room as you think.
I think if we're saying again, and they're all competing for the same vote, in my opinion. You can have Paul Mescal, who's already been there, who can't win from this. You have Jacob Elordi, but he's playing a creature. And you can have Josh O'Connor, who's basically in every movie this year and did a good job in all of them. and has yet to be nominated. I'm saying I don't think it's impossible.
Right.
I'm saying I would not be surprised if he shows up for a Golden Globe nomination, maybe even a SAG nomination. That's all I'm saying about that.
Right. As great as he is in this movie, again, I think it's weird to put him in supporting because he doesn't feel supporting at all. He feels like a lead. I think that's gonna hurt. And I disagree with you. I really do think that the best supporting actor category is kind of done. You know, I think it's Skarsgård, Sean Penn, Paul Mescal, Benicio del Toro, and Adam Sandler. I don't think that that's going to move. I feel pretty confident about that. But yeah, you know, like I said, I'd be happy for her and she'd be like a sigh of relief. It's like, okay, well, we know who's winning this category now. Best supporting actress. But yeah, I just don't see it. I think it's a screenplay nomination only.
I think script for sure. Do not sleep on those other two. That's all I'm saying. Well, let's jump then to a couple of movies that people have sort of had on the outlier of Best Picture. One of which I think we liked a lot, but I think after seeing it, I think we're in agreement. No Other Choice from South Korea.
Right. We were able to see No Other Choice a couple weeks ago. Park Chan-wook's satirical black comedy thriller. It's a dark fable on, you know, contemporary work culture. I absolutely loved it. I think it's one of the best films of the year. I think it's one of Park Chan-wook's best. It was biting and tragic and so resonant and timely and, you know, invigorating. I loved it. I think the crowd we saw it with liked it as well. It's accessible and it's just, you know, beautifully composed. No surprise there from Park Chan-wook. I will say that I feel pretty confident. I think this is what you were, you know, implying, that it will not be nominated for foreign language film, and that it's going to be blanked. It's not.
Some people are talking about Best Picture.
Yeah, I don't think it will be nominated for anything.
Well, I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed the film as well. I thought it was very good. It's certainly one of my favorites of the year. Tremendous work by Park Chan-wook. Great performance by Lee Byung-hun.
Very good. Yeah, he's fantastic.
Fantastic in it. And listen, I think somewhere between the topic maybe not being timely enough, Neon having way too many movies, and Park Chan-wook getting in some hot water earlier this year with the WGA, somewhere between all that is a snub waiting to happen for No Other Choice.
Right. You feel like the topic's not timely with, you know, the sort of,
I
think we're reaching this fever pitch of,
you're right.
You know,
Maybe
desperation.
You're right.
Regard to
I think you're right. I think I take that back.
The machine of, you know,
you're right.
workforce.
I think that it's maybe a very timely topic that I overlooked. And maybe that'll be the factor that helps it get in for foreign film. But I think that they've just had such a strong history of not liking Park Chan-wook films.
That's true.
At the same time, you know, the source material, Donald Westlake, a little bit more respected in sort of American cinema vernacular.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if that helps also. I think it's really going to need the international community to get behind it for it to score any kind of nomination, but certainly international film and anything else. Like, for example, I don't know where they're campaigning it, what category, but I wouldn't sleep on Lee Byung-hun getting in for Best Actor at the Golden Globes.
Really?
For example,
Comedy.
I think he's in for that category, to be perfectly honest. I don't think he can repeat that anywhere else, unfortunately. And it would have to be like the critics' darling across the board. And I just don't think that it has the same urgency there as, you know, something like One Battle has. So I don't think that's going to happen. But I think it's a solid film. I think you're right. It's timely enough where it can get into Best Foreign Language Film. But I think there's only 3 Neon films for Best Foreign Film. Right. I don't think there's any more than that.
I agree with that. And I will say that as much as I loved it, I still feel like it won't get nominated for foreign language film. I think, unfortunately, Park Chan-wook is a little bit, as you were saying, in hot water that I think is going to affect the nomination tally for him in this film. Certainly in screenplay, certainly in Best Picture, and even in Best Foreign Film.
Can you imagine if it did get on for Best Adapted Screenplay after all that at the Oscars? Like, I think
quite ironic. Yeah,
they're going to be some very upset guild members.
Right, but I loved it.
Yeah, very good film. And I think after you sort of reminded me, I think it may just be timely enough in ways that other Park Chan-wook films aren't to maybe sneak in there. But it would have to be over The Secret Agent
or
any other neon film, but you only have spots for 3.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And you kind of already have 2.
Yeah, you already have. Well, because you already have. Yeah, it's really hard to beat The Secret Agent, Sentimental Value, and it was just an accident. Yeah, it's very hard.
Yeah, so I don't. And by the way, one film that we haven't had the opportunity to screen yet, which is getting a lot of great notices, is Surat. Right, so that's really the killer right there.
Right, yeah.
So then why don't we jump talking about a film that I didn't get a chance to see, but you saw it. And actually, I was really happy to hear you were a fan of it. Let's talk about Bradley Cooper's new film From Searchlight.
Yes, I really enjoyed watching This Is This Thing On. To my surprise,
you were sort of like...
Yeah, I was kind of a negative when I saw the trailer. I've been a little bit on a downswing for Bradley Cooper, after Maestro, which I wasn't crazy about. I'll say that of his 3 films, I think it's the film I like most.
I knew it. I freaking knew it.
It's just really charming and it's very inviting. It has this very accessible energy. It's fun. It's funny. It's sweet. It's poignant. And it's well done. I think Bradley Cooper brought a dynamism to it that he was able to sort of acquire in his first 2 films that I think really helped this movie flow. And the crowd I saw it with a packed crowd, and everyone loved it. And Will Arnett gives his best performance. He hasn't stretched himself too much in the dramatic actor space, but he's quite lovely here. Laura Dern is good, but Will Arnett I think is the star. And it's just it was a film that's just it's just like sitting down with a friend and having a nice vibe. It was very inviting. It was warm. It was funny. So I quite liked it. The crowd I saw it with, was laughing and having a good time. I'll say that I didn't love the ending, which again, I won't spoil it, but there's something about the ending that I think,
that's the most important part of the movie.
Well, but the thing that I don't like about it is very particular. It's not like Bugonia, which, some people are just not going to like that ending, period.
Right.
It's more like there's something about the ending that I think another film called dibs on that I don't think anybody can use it after that film used it. And so that's the one thing that I thought oh, come on, I didn't like that.
Interesting.
As soon as you see it, if any of you have seen it, or as soon as you'll see it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But I quite enjoyed it, but I don't think that it's going to land anywhere. I think the only place it could technically land if enough writers see it and enjoy it, but they've already nominated him twice. And I think that there's going to be a prevailing sentiment that even though it's a good Bradley Cooper film, that the other 2 were more difficult films.
Pomposity.
Yeah. They were more difficult films, and, because they were more difficult, I guess, they were bigger achievements, even if, they liked it, this third film. So I don't see them embracing it for our screenplay nomination. I think Best Actor is the most competitive category of the year in the acting category, certainly. So I don't think we'll get nominated there, but I don't see how he doesn't get a Golden Globe nomination out of this.
They're running a drama now.
Right. Still, I don't see how he doesn't get a Golden Globe nomination out of this. And yeah, I was a big fan. I think you'll like it a lot when you see it.
I loved the trailer, and I was disappointed to have missed it, but I'm so glad to hear that you liked it. I hope we don't yin yang on it. I'm not a fan of Bradley Cooper's directing efforts at all, but I did like this trailer a lot. So many things that you're saying are striking to me, primarily because Searchlight does have a reputation of getting into Best Picture, and I know that they sort of railroaded this movie by buying Ann Lee. You've seen Ann Lee now, and you don't think it's going to get anywhere near Best Picture. I've seen Ann Lee, and I think it's really close to Best Picture. And so it's interesting that you're saying Ann Lee can't get anywhere near it. But Is This Thing On, you enjoyed a lot and is much more accessible, but you have your hesitation about whether or not I can break through. Right. At the same time, I look at original screenplay, and I see open spots, because if the best you're giving me is weapons, and again, I enjoyed weapons immensely, I just know it's not necessarily their thing. If the best you're giving me is weapons, Sinners can possibly be too genre. Is this thing on crash that category? I think it can. I think between, Will Arnett and Bradley Cooper and just the topic and the searchlight element to it, I think it could end up surprising there.
I certainly think it's a film that's tailor-made to be a crowd pleaser. And so I'll be curious to see if the audience shows up for it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because
Over Christmas.
Because I do think that if they do and it makes money, I think it, as you've been hinting throughout the conversation, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And again, the crowd I saw was laughing and having a good time. Yeah. But I'm just not sure that, again, we're in that climate where films are having an easy time finding an audience, even if they're crowd pleasers.
I mean, I can't wait to see it. I definitely think you should keep an eye on it for original screenplay. The other thing I'll say, and I think it's a great bridge into the next movie we're going to talk about, is Will Arnett. I think he's going to get a lot of respect for putting himself out there like that and doing it as successfully as you're saying. And so I remember when Sarah Silverman, who I love, gave a performance for I Smile Back, which is a performance that I respect tremendously, and she was able to get a SAG nomination for that. I do wonder, as crowded as a year as it is for Best Actor, Will Arnett has put in so much time in the industry. Very seldom is he ever going to run a lead actor campaign. Does the SAG at least say, no way am I going to pass up a chance to nominate Will Arnett in a film directed by fellow actor Bradley Cooper, where he's playing, where he's digging into his own his own life for material, and also doing a dramatic role, the principal role, number one on the call sheet. And so no way am I going to pass up the opportunity to nominate him there. And so I do wonder about that. I'm not sure as you said, I'm not sure at the end he'll be able to broker that into a nomination, because they may have had to have snubbed Wagner Moura to make room for Will Arnett. But I do wonder if Will Arnett is going to be able to get that same sort of love that Sarah Silverman was able to get.
That's a good point.
I Smile Back.
That's a good point. I think that's
kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that's very possible.
And so the next film to talk about, I think a lot of people have seen, but we finally caught up with, which is Springsteen, right? Another Best Actor contender.
Yes, which underperformed at the box office.
Again, another very disappointing premiere from the fall.
Right, and you and I were kind of sensing that this film was going to underperform with critics since we saw the trailer all the way back in the summer. Sometimes we have a good sixth sense, sometimes we don't, but and that I think it's better, it's more good than bad. And we were just sensing that they just did the Bob Dylan A Complete Unknown, a music biopic. It just seems too soon to do another one of those. Once it came out in Telluride, there was a lot of buzz about, the Jeremy Allen White performance. So we thought, well, maybe it's a single nominee for Best Actor for Jeremy Allen White, even though Jeremy Allen White is kind of a weird person also, because he very much mimics a lot Rami Malek, who won for something similar, because they're both more known for their TV work before they won, before Rami Malek won for Bohemian Rhapsody. So again, Jeremy Allen White is known more for his TV work. He's also been very celebrated for his TV work. Some people might have thought that could help him, because that means a lot of, there are probably a lot of actors who watch The Bear and are fans, but that could also hurt, because, you're used to seeing him in The Bear, and you kind of know that he's been so celebrated on The Bear that he kind of has to prove that he's ready to make the jump into the Best Actor category. Right. So you and I were really thinking for a long time, okay, well, maybe this is a solo nominee for Best Actor. And then Ethan Hawke really started to pick up steam for Blue Moon. And I think it became quite clear to you and I very early on that solo nominee spot was going to be either Ethan Hawke or Jeremy Allen White. Ethan Hawke had the critics, had the Berlin premiere. Jeremy Allen White had what they typically like, even though, again, Blue Moon is, about the industry in a way, about a figure in the industry in a way, and it's also something that they liked. So just, there was a lot of parallel, there was a big parallel between the two, in that Best Actor spot.
And the question of, whether, is there room for both?
Right, right, exactly. I thought absolutely no way, it's one or the other. And then when I first saw Blue Moon, I thought, well, the film, is certainly very acclaimed, but it's also very static, and so maybe they're just going to be more drawn to the flashiness of Springsteen. And actually the opposite happened. Springsteen ended up having even more middle of the road reviews, and didn't do well at the box office, as you and I were thinking that it might have done.
You got to get one.
Exactly. And so I think all of those factors really started to lessen its ability to jump over someone like Ethan Hawke, who's been waiting to get in since he was, notoriously and just horrendously snubbed for First Reformed, for Best Actor. And so
now more than a decade since Boyhood.
And Boyhood. He's a respected actor.
Never gone lead.
He's never been nominated for lead. And so just the stars are aligning for Ethan Hawke to certainly get his, I think it's his third acting nomination.
Yep.
First time in lead. And that he will beat Jeremy Allen White for that spot.
Right.
As far as the movie goes, I'll just say that, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I think that it's well-intentioned. I like its concept of trying to focus on this difficult period of Bruce Springsteen and his creation of Nebraska and his struggles with trauma and depression. But I just feel like the film, to me, felt like the concept never fully flourished. It kind of stayed at concept level.
Right.
And and we were talking about after we saw the movie, that's kind of a critique I have a lot about this director, Scott Cooper, and a feeling that I feel often when I see his films. And so, I don't think the film hits hard enough. And again, it feels a little bit stuck in concept level.
Right.
As opposed to a full rendering, character-wise, story-wise. And I will say that I think the performances were very good. I think Jeremy Allen White is good. I think Odessa Young was good.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, my favorite performance was actually Jeremy Strong, which was not what I expected. Seeing the previews, it felt like very, Oscar baity.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to say that it really worked for me. I think, he was a character that felt inhabited, and not showy in a way that I think was quite effective. So that was maybe my favorite performance of the movie. Again, all this to say that I don't think the film is going to get nominated for any Oscars.
Okay.
And it's a zero nominee, even though I do expect Jeremy Allen White to get a SAG and Globe nomination, both or one or the other, possibly Jeremy Strong to land somewhere as well, Globe or SAG. I think it hurts that
what hurts is that he got them both.
There.
Yeah,
was just there.
Had he been snubbed anywhere that he had been snubbed for The Apprentice, I would say that he would get in for this movie.
Right.
But he got in everything. He got the SAG, the Globe, and the Oscar.
Yeah, that's why you and I were always very cold on Jeremy Strong getting nominated for this, because, like I said, repeat nominations, consecutive nominations are very difficult,
right?
Despite some people thinking that they're easier than they are. And I just, it's too soon, especially if he's not winning.
I was a big fan of Stephen Graham in the film. I'm a big Stephen Graham
fan. Oh,
fan.
yeah, Stephen Graham is very good
anyway.
as well. Yeah.
Odessa Young, I thought, did a great job, too. I was kind of a little bit mixed on the Jeremy Allen White performance, but it really grew on me on the second half. And I liked it, and I really respected the performance he gave, and I thought he did a very good job, and I think he has a very bright future ahead of him. I just don't think that it scored enough between critics and general audience members to make the argument for the Best Actor nomination, so I don't think he'll get very far. But that said, it reminded me a lot of something that I see sort of evolving in the Best Actor race, which is that we don't really have any shortage of worthy performances. We have a lot of worthy performances. This goes back to like Dwayne Johnson, for example. Jesse Plemmons is fantastic in his film. It's really going to come down to like who gets there first. And so this is the argument that I made, and I hope we can talk about it further in another episode. But the argument I made was, after seeing the film, and we were lucky enough to see it together, I liked it. I liked the film. I got to say that. It's on the side of Scott Cooper films that I enjoyed. I understand that it's not trying to reinvent the wheel at all, that it's borrowed the wheel from the wheel store and it's not doing anything new, but I think it does it with enough humanity that I enjoyed the film. But what was interesting to me is, as we discussed the prospects of the film, is the idea that because they're all sort of tied, Jeremy Allen White, Dwayne Johnson, Jesse Plemons, is a more established actor, but at the same time, it's a more alienating film.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all sort of tied, it's really going to come down to, and what I thought, or what I was trying to suggest to you, it's going to come down to who's able to get that final SAG nomination, and if anyone is able to sort of broker their Golden Globe nomination into a Golden Globe win. And so, for example, you and I have always been hot on the idea that Wagner Moura is going to win the Golden Globe drama, which is still our theory number A.
Yeah.
But if something happens that they do not want to give it to Wagner Moura, that best actor list on the drama side, any one of them can win. All the favorites to win best actor, a lot of the stronger contenders are actually on the comedy side.
Yeah.
And so if Jeremy Allen White wins the Golden Globe because they don't want to give it to Wagner Moura, that may be all he needs. If Dwayne Johnson wins the Golden Globe, we talked Michael B. Jordan. If Michael B. Jordan can go from Sinners being maybe one of the few Best Actor nominees actually listed in Best Picture to winning the Golden Globe for Best Actor, then vampire film be damned, I think Michael B. Jordan gets in for Sinners.
Right now, he's, I think, a favorite to get in, but you and I are predicting that he won't because
of the whole vampire thing.
And not only that actually Warner Brothers, their acting vehicle is clearly one after another.
That's right. Yeah.
And usually when they've had more than one film in Best Picture, there's usually one that's their actor film and one that's their more, tech film.
Yeah. And Sinners fits the bill a little bit better in terms of their being their tech film.
Yeah.
But, if he wins that Golden Globe, I think that he would have to get in. The same thing for any of those other. For example, Russell Crowe wins the Golden Globe. I think Russell Crowe would have to get in for Nuremberg.
Right.
And so to me, Jeremy Allen White, Russell Crowe, Dwayne Johnson, Jesse Plemons, Wagner Moura, really it's just a race to who wins the Golden Globe drama.
Right.
Because we already know so many actors are going to get in from the comedy side, and the favorite to win is going to get in from the comedy side.
Right.
And so it's really just a matter of the race to Golden Globe Best Actor Drama, and is the advantage right now with Michael B. Jordan because of his competitors, Train Dreams, Springsteen, Smashing Machine. He may be the only one to feature in a Best Picture movie.
Right. Yeah, exactly. 100%.
So I think that's the big takeaway I took from Springsteen. Solid performance, could happen. The campaign needs to focus on winning the Golden Globe. That's every actor's concern, is winning the Golden Globe drama. Forget about anything else.
Well, I think that's an excellent point. I don't see it happening, but I do agree with you that if he were somehow able to win the Golden Globe, I think that changes things. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about another film that disappointed when it came out, and I think you and I kind of knew that it was going to disappoint. We got a chance to screen it. We're switching over to Best Actress now, and let's talk about Christie. With Sydney Sweeney, and this was released by Black Bear. Black Bear's first film that they're releasing, distributing themselves. They're more known on the production design, the production side. For example, they are part of the production of Train Dreams, which they then sold to Netflix. But I think they were unhappy with the deals they were getting to distribute their film, so they went out of their way to distribute Sydney Sweeney's film. It's their first film. It face planted, more or less. The audiences didn't come, unfortunately. Here's another contender in the Best Actress race that was very much trying to play the real person card,
real figure
against Amanda Seyfried, who she will actually co-star with this Christmas in The Housemaid. So that's extra fun,
funny.
Extra meta there. But so Christy, what did you think?
First, I'll just say that I'm a huge David Michôd fan. So I was actually excited to see Christie. I think it's his weakest film. I was not a big fan. I think there's a lot of things about the way this film was done that are a little bit, sloppy for his standards. I think he's such a particular filmmaker that to me, it felt a little bit by the numbers. Something that's not, that is weird to say with this filmmaker, because his films are very much not that. It at times kind of flirted with being like a Lifetime movie. And I take no pleasure in saying that. I certainly think the first half of the film is the weakest part. And I think that the second half of the film, when we get into the, we get further into the abuse that she underwent at the hands, that Christy underwent at the hands of her husband, I think the film sort of starts to attain a little bit more energy, a little bit more power.
It's like a jolt.
And then it gets so incredibly violent at the very end of the film that, you can't help but be amazed at what this woman was able to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly you cannot take that away. It's an incredible real life story. And what happens to her is so nightmarish that it's appalling. And that she was able to overcome that, again, is very inspiring. That being said, though, if this wasn't, and you made the point, I think it's an excellent point, that if this wasn't a real life story and it was a fictional story, and that same, those events that transpired towards the end of the film end up making the page and end up making the screen, that would have been very problematic, because it was such a shift, story-wise, thematically, the energy of the piece. It's just such a shift that it would have been borderline unacceptable.
Yeah, I that's the way I felt as well. Is that there comes a moment in the film, if you've seen it, and you should try to watch it on the big screen if you get a chance. There comes a moment in the film where just the weight of what actually happened to Christy Martin is, as you said, a nightmarish, and again, just her story, her ability to overcome that, to persevere in the face of that, is just absolutely extraordinary. To the point where if the film were fictional, those elements, or that particular element that I'm referencing, and once you see the film, you'll know what we're talking about, is absolutely infuriating.
Yeah.
Because
it would be infuriating.
It would be infuriating because the film, in large part, does not earn it.
Right.
Does not earn, the amazing comeback that character has.
Right. Not only that, it doesn't also earn going into that
territory. Yeah,
that territory.
And, it's almost, and the fact that it's real to me was also kind of frustrating, because how do you not, in my opinion, render the film more passionately on the road to that? Mm-hmm. If that's where it goes, I don't think playing, painting by numbers and having a conventional take on it really helped. Right. Really helped. And so it was kind of frustrating, especially from David, who's so immensely talented.
Yeah.
At the same time, this has always been sort of pushed as a vehicle for Sydney Sweeney, who plays Christy Martin, ever since the Toronto premiere. I think it's a very good. I think it's a good performance, despite the shortcomings on the script. I don't think it's her best performance. I think I liked her a little bit more in reality. For example,
yes, I did too.
Which did not get a theatrical release, unfortunately. But I think it's a solid performance. I understand that it has sort of the package to want to push for Best Actress.
It's a good role.
It's a good role. I think when you see the film, the true story might be so impacting enough that it could, potentially get in for a SAG nomination. I think a Golden Globe nomination is a given, but I also think that if enough people don't see the film, and that's where it's sort of headed right now, it could just be a Golden Globe nominee. Right. I will say my favorite performance comes from Ben Foster, who's an actor that I absolutely adore, and I think the depths that he has to go to are a very, I think, very difficult thing to do.
Right. I mean, I think it was a good role. I see the attraction there, and I see why it's being pushed for Best Actress. I think that at times, I often felt, actually I shouldn't say at times, I often felt that she was miscast. I thought that the role felt like should have been given to an older, more seasoned actress.
Talked about that. Yeah.
Yes. But I will say that when it gets into that really dark terrain, I think she really kind of embraces it in a way that I think is effective. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that. And I do think that a Golden Globe nomination is very possible. I think it won't get a SAG nomination. I think the only chance it would have gotten a SAG nomination is if it had been a hit,
or a modest hit,
right? Which it wasn't. So I think it's Globe, and that's it at most. I think that there are aspects that I agree with you about Ben Foster. I think there are moments where, again, he's one of our greatest actors. And so there are moments where I think I was really able to feel that, that wrath and that authenticity from his portrayal. But there are other moments where I think he comes across, whether it be because of his choices or because of how he's being shot and how he's being directed, that he can come across a little bit too similar to like a caricature of what he's portraying. So I don't think he can fully escape that. But I think there are plenty of talented actors in this movie. Merritt Weaver has a few scenes, and I thought she was very effective in portraying this very cold character. I thought Katie O'Brien was a breath of fresh air.
Katie O'Brien was great in it, to the point where I had to say, why the hell wasn't Katie O'Brien given the Christy Martin part? I will say that.
Yeah.
She just had such a naturalistic presence in the movie for me.
But physically, though, maybe she just doesn't resemble Christy Martin too much.
Maybe, but I do think that you're right. So many of the performances in the film border on caricature. And what Katie O'Brien is giving you, it feels completely different. That I would have preferred the movie with Katie O'Brien in the lead part.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think that's fair. I will say that one of the biggest takeaways for me from this whole Christie thing is that, I've been really disappointed in Sydney Sweeney and how she's handled the sort of controversy that has surrounded her after the jeans ad and whatnot, and Trump, putting his foot in his mouth and commenting. I really don't like how she handled that. I really don't like how maybe she was advised to handle that by her team. And I will say that an experience of, what's happened with Christie, I think, is really crystallizing of how, how sort of distorted this whole thing is. You're, in a way, it seems like not commenting on that controversy and putting things right for, many people who were offended by the ad, at least having a dialogue about it, a conversation about it, was pandering to a fan base that she maybe is aware that she has. Somehow the right thinks that she's their adopted daughter, without understanding that a lot of her work is work that they would never watch. They would never see The White Lotus. They would never see Reality, which is anti-Trump. They would never see Christie because it's about a lesbian boxer.
At the end of the day, yeah.
And so it's really sad that you, in a way, possibly pander to this audience that won't show up for you, won't show up for your craft, won't show up for art, because so much of art is, outside of what they're interested in.
Right.
And so in a way, I just think that it's very misguided from her or her team or both, about how she's going to handle this stardom and this attention. And I think hopefully she saw where it's, where it's leading her. Hopefully she saw what it's giving her, which is a film that was liked by many at Toronto and has some good reviews from many people who did like it, and flopped, and here's a story that I think it's a story that deserves to be told. I think Christie's story is incredible. And so I just think it's such a shame that, you are just so misguided in, your craft, that you don't understand where you're standing and where you should be standing.
Right. I think it's more a miscalculation in terms of the publicity side, because I do think it reveals that as much as, certain audience members are going to, show up when you give them something that pleases them, if you want to go and try to make something that's a little bit more challenging, make something that, is probably going to, show your peers what you're capable of, and maybe show another side of what you can do, they're very much less likely to show up.
Right.
And so I think you have to be careful in this day and age of, not alienating too many people. I think it's disappointing. I'm sure it's not the launch that she or her team or Black Bear would have wanted, but I think at the very least, it sort of shows the industry that, she's a capable actress. She just needs good material. At the same time, I will say that, I think she kind of showed that with Reality, if you had seen Reality.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's growing pains. But I think like other young actors, Jeremy Allen White, Jacob Elordi, it puts her in the trajectory to be nominated in the future.
Yeah, but like I said, I would go further. I would say there's a little bit of reaping and sowing here, because if you're so adamant about not, confronting things that are, important to a lot of people because you're trying to pander to a different group of people that at the same time, just like you were saying, they're not going to show up for art. They're not going to show up for this. There's a lack of, there's something very incoherent and antithetical about the whole thing.
Right. No, I understand that. I could see that.
Right.
So that was interesting. I think, why don't we talk about another film in the Best Actress category that was not a people pleaser? That being said, it made more money than I thought. And so let's just take a moment here to reiterate how much you enjoyed Die My Love.
Yeah, you haven't gotten a chance to see it yet.
D pluses for Die My Love.
Yeah, but we mentioned it in our previous episode when we talked about Cannes. I love that film, but you and I both knew that it was a film that was destined to not do well with general audiences. Even at Cannes, which is a cinephile's paradise, there were a lot of mixed reactions, a lot of polarized reactions. Even if it was doing well critically, we always thought that it would do well critically. Again, it's one of my favorite films of the year, but the film is very operating on this wavelength that, it can be very distancing work. It can be very isolating work. Lynn Ramsey is a genius, and you see all her gifts in this film, full stop. But it's a film that's really trying to help, that really manages to get you to access this very particular and scary and, frightening and surreal trauma. And so the film is so immensely successful in putting you in the mindset of this character. It's invigorating work by Lynn Ramsey, by Jennifer Lawrence, who gives her best performance to date, but it's challenging work. And it's definitely something that I thought a lot of audiences were going to be repelled by.
And they were.
And they were.
And they lived up to their part of the bargain because they were.
But,
but at least it wasn't an F.
Right. But you and I joke, like if you get a Lynn Ramsey movie that's a D+, that just shows you how good it is.
Yeah, that's probably one hell of a Lynn Ramsey.
Right. And so I can't wait for you to see it. I loved it. If you get a chance, try to see it in the theater.
At the same time, it didn't make money, right?
Well, I mean, it made some money. Like it didn't make Christie money, but it made some money, but still very, very, very low from what it needed to make, especially when you consider the movie paid $24 million to acquire it.
Right, which is out of this world. But at the same time, I mean, we're living in a world where Die My Love has outgrossed Christie, and that says something.
Yeah.
Right? Because
that's interesting.
It is interesting. And that's the other thing. Christie, like, it's too long. It's like way too long of a movie. Because like even Nuremberg, which plays it safe, was smart enough to be, was smart enough to do it well enough that people went to go see it.
Right. Well, some people will absolutely feel that Die My Love is too long as well.
I'm sure that, and that reflects in the D+. That said, they already got the people to buy the ticket, and so they're not getting refunds. And so it outgrows Christie, which was a pleasant surprise. I think I wasn't expecting that. I think one thing I want to ask you, because you had a moment to recently revisit it, and to me, this is where the argument comes, which is D+ be damned. Die My Love has made enough money to at least be nominated for a Golden Globe actress drama, in my opinion. I don't think it can do anything else, but I think there's that. But now that Die My Love has come out and gotten a D+ and made what is it, like 2 million plus?
Maybe 3 million.
Yeah, maybe it'll make 5 over its run in theaters, maybe. But now that it's made that, the reality is that it has made substantially more than If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You.
Yeah.
Which is a similarly themed film, which will compete in a different category at the Golden Globes, but it will be perpetually haunted by the idea that these two films are of a piece, they're sort of cousin projects or sister projects. And so now that one is just so much more financially successful than the other, is that going to factor into the Best Actress race? Bear in mind also, let me just preface this by saying there are 5 spots for Best Actress. You already have Jessie Buckley and Ramona Rines. You're saying Amanda Seyfried is undeniable, and Emma Stone is there with Venice, with Begonia. And my point is, we have so much challenging material in Best Actress,
right,
that is Rose Byrne going to be the victim of she's in the challenging material that is most anonymous because we have no idea as an Oscar voter who Mary Bronstein is.
right.
And because Rose Byrne isn't a headliner like Emma Stone or Jennifer Lawrence or a previous nominee like either of those, she's not real like Ann Lee, and it just didn't make enough money.
Yeah. It's an interesting question. I do think that there is a difference in the sense that I believe that more audiences will hate Die My Love, and more audiences will maybe be a little bit, it's not my thing about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. I still think there's things about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You that certainly will feel nebulous to some people who watch it, but not as inaccessible to some people as Die My Love might be. Again, Glenn Ramsay's really working brilliantly in getting you into the psyche of this tortured and troubled young woman. And I think If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You spends a little bit more time in sort of the chaos of motherhood, right, that could be maybe possibly a little bit more penetrable,
right,
than the, broken psyche of a, disappearing woman, internally.
Right.
Both terrific films. I got a chance to, as I said earlier in the episode, to revisit If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, which I was lukewarm after I saw it at Sundance, but I quite liked it now. Both terrific performances, among the very best of actresses this year. I think it helps Rose Byrne that she is never been nominated and is possibly or very likely a very likable person, very likable actor. She's worked with a lot of people. She's never gotten her flowers. She won Berlin. This film has shown up everywhere. Went to Berlin, went to Sundance, went to Toronto, went to TIFF, went to New York. It just went everywhere. And I think she's an actor that people have grown to love, for her comedy skills, she's just an insanely talented actor. And I think her peers know that. And when they see If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, they're going to see a stretch. They're going to see her stretching herself in a way that they don't often see her. And that's going to be attractive. Jennifer Lawrence is certainly stretching herself. She's going for broke in Die My Love. It's her best performance. But she's already a 4-time nominee. She's already an Oscar winner. And they've already seen her stretch herself. They've already experienced Mother, and this is very much in the Mother vein,
right?
And so in a way, it's a little bit more, possibly could be more attractive with Rose Byrne than with her.
Right.
And again, it's all wrapped in this bubble for Die My Love of a film that I think a lot of people will actively hate, and again, I think that certain things about If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, can pass. Right. I didn't get that, but this was effective and that was effective,
I mean, I have to revisit If I Had Legs, I will when I get an opportunity, and I have to watch Die My Love. I love Lynn Ramsay's work, though.
Oh, yes.
But it seems to me like the stars are aligning for a Rose Byrne snub for the ages. That she's, I think, in an extremely strong position to get in a very similar position that Ethan Hawke was in for First Reformed, but in the same way that film was just possibly too alienating for actors.
Right.
I'm starting to think that If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is going to go the way of First Reformed, Ethan Hawke, Daniel Craig for Queer, which is she's too alone, she's too young, she's in too challenging of a film. that did not make enough money, that is not anywhere near a priority for A24, and that will probably be sort of her Achilles heel and probably have her missing out at the very end. And so, like, right, maybe Die My Love is too alienating as well. But then I'm starting to think that if we have to choose someone between all this challenging work beside Amanda Seyfried, then maybe the safest option will end up at the end of the day end up being Emma Stone.
Well, I think that's valid. I will say, well, first of all, I think that First Reformed is more like Die My Love than it is like If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. That would be my impression, because there's something really opaque about First Reformed that is similar to the opaqueness that is in Die My Love. I think If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You is, I won't put it past the territory of opaque, but not as much as Die My Love. But you bring up a good point. I really don't like when you say she's so young. She's too young. Because, and I've mentioned this, in this year's Best Actress race, she is among the oldest people, the oldest contenders to possibly get nominated. That's crazy to say because she's a young woman. She's a beautiful woman. She's 46 years old. That's not old. In this category for Best Actress, it is. Because June Squibb, Julia Roberts are contenders that would fit the bill of being actresses over 50 to get nominated. Mm-hmm. They're not contenders, or they're not serious contenders, because their movies are poorly received, and in some cases did very poorly at the box office. She's one of the very few contenders here who can at least be in her 40s. You know, Cynthia Erivo and Amanda Seyfried have similar age, I think in 39. Renata Rines and Jessie Buckley are of a similar age, I believe, in their mid-30s. We need some older blood here. We can't have a list of only 30-year-olds. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't happen for a reason. We should have some veteran presence here. By veteran, I mean older actors. And the best you've got is Rose Byrne for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. I know there's a case to be made, and maybe we'll talk about this movie next, for Lucy Liu in Rosemead, but that's a film that's being released by Vertical. Doesn't have a trajectory of getting into the Oscars. A24 does. So, you know, I think it helps. Her age helps her in this particular scenario, because she's one of the oldest actors to be able to possibly get nominated this year. And this Best Actress list needs that. It's lacking.
I mean, I think that's certainly a point. I guess I was sort of alluding to the idea that at one point, you know, actors who've accumulated a tremendous reputation, a tremendous filmography, they tend to be nominated. And I'm thinking of Isabelle Huppert. I'm thinking about Charlotte Rampling. But they're certainly nominated at the advanced stages of their career. You know what I mean? Not necessarily their peak work. But there just comes a point where, you know, Daniel Craig at some point, if he's not in a Best Picture movie, will at some point be nominated, just because there will come a moment where you're going to say, it's do or die basically for me to nominate Daniel Craig right now. And so I'm wondering if that's what's going to end up happening for Rose. I do think you bring up a very good point, and I think that we haven't heard the last of that storyline. And I agree with you. Like, I don't like a list of Best Actress that could skew too young, and that's where I think most people are at right now. Rose Byrne helps. I actually think, and we'll talk about it more as, you know, they start ramping up the campaign for the release in late December, I think. But I certainly think that Lucy Liu and Rosemead is someone that most people are sleeping on, and that I would advise them strongly not to. But yeah, I think that my only concern with Rose Byrne is that the film, not unlike Train Dreams, you know, it really needs so much care from some element that's going to influence the vote. And I if they don't show up, then I don't know what chance she has.
Right.
And even then, I'm thinking about like Toni Collette for Hereditary.
Right.
Right.
But I
another
think
A24 movie.
But I think that's the thing. I think that Gotham showed that the independent community is going to show up for her.
They have to.
And it's going to show up for the movie.
I mean, they have to. And then even then,
And I agree with you. I think she stands to be one of the prime contenders to win a lot of these, coveted critics groups for Best Actress. So, I mean, all those things I think will be top of mind for people in these circles to want to keep her in the conversation.
Well, I worry about her, I have to say. Well, then let's talk about the last film for this week's episode, which is one that I'm really happy we're ending on, because it's one that I was really happy with and I was really excited about, and I had a lot of energy, and I think is also sort of frustrating because it has just been so mishandled from the beginning, which is Amazon MGM's release of Hedda, which features a fantastic Tessa Thompson performance, and is a beautiful production. Shot by Sean Bobbitt, great costumes, production design, music by Hildur from most people recognize from Joker, who won an Oscar for Joker. This is a tremendously a well-made film. Nia DaCosta, writer-director. If you're a fan of hers from Candyman, I certainly was. Totally lives up to what you would expect her to do with her filmmaking skills. And so it's kind of frustrating to know that this film got the back burner treatment, and that after The Hunt was opening the New York Film Festival, that's kind of, upsetting. And it's sort of interesting too, because Hedda, when it premiered in Toronto, was more polarized. It was like, Metacritic was like barely 60, like 61, 62. And it had a good bounce back as more critics started watching the film, which was really, really great to see. I think it's a strong film. I think it's just a victim of the way it's being positioned by its studio, which is Amazon MGM. But I don't think that we've heard the last on Tessa Thompson, and I certainly don't think that we've heard the last on Nina Haas, who did a fantastic job in a gender-reversed role for Love Board. Just did a great job. And so to me, this is a film that not only that I enjoyed, but I think people may be sleeping on it in categories like actress, supporting actress, costume design was great. So I would definitely keep my eye on it. And it's certainly one of the films that I enjoyed the most from among this list.
Right. I thought it was a good film, very good film. I think Nia DaCosta takes a very, iconic text and she makes it her own. I was really impressed by that. I was impressed by the visuals, and Sean Bobbitt's cinematography was, I think, very ornate, very alluring. The music as well. I think Tessa Thompson is great. I think Nina Haas is spectacular. Nina Haas is, one of our greatest actresses alive. If you
can do almost anything, by the way.
She can do absolutely anything. And if you've seen her work, throughout the years, that already. There's a reason why Cate Blanchett says, you're the actress that I want to be, because she's just that amazing. And she gets a killer role here.
Absolutely.
And she's, blazing whenever she's on screen. And I think Tessa Thompson does a terrific job of, really committing to the part. I do think that, because of the part that she plays, it runs the risk of, rubbing a little bit aggressively for the public, because she's she's kind of an antagonist in a way. But again, the text is so well known that about this story, Hedda Gabler. And I think they're very strong performances. And I think Nia DaCosta really kind of shows her muscle here as a director. I think all of this becomes an issue in that Amazon chose the wrong horse for After the Hunt. After the Hunt got the Venice premiere, After the Hunt got the New York opening film, and Hedda was left with scraps, and it just got a Toronto premiere. It was in theaters for less than a week, and it went right into Prime. It really got the secondary treatment from Amazon. It was clear, who they're prioritizing. They just prioritized the wrong horse. And so I just feel like, as much as I would love to see Tessa Thompson and Nina Haas factor into the acting categories, and I do think that if somehow voters were to see the film, that could be a reality. I think there's already been too much damage done by Amazon MGM to make it a secondary horse. That's going to be an issue. That's going to be difficult.
I think it's a completely legitimate take.
It's going to be difficult for voters to prioritize it. It's going to be difficult for voters to see it. I don't know that Amazon would or is even planning to make a 180 and switch all their resources onto HEDA. It doesn't look that way with the recent news of the Gotham Award for After the Hunt. Kind of feels like in the contract they're supposed to push it, so they have to. And so I think that HEDA might be a victim to that. And I don't know if it can overcome that. I don't know if it can, survive that. Being this, like I said, second horse that's not going to get the tender love and care that it needs.
I think what's interesting is after seeing After the Hunt is that I kind of pegged it, and we talked about it in one of our previous episodes. To me, After the Hunt is a film that gets nominated for nothing. Right. And I mean, like on the way to 0 Oscar nominations, it will also get 0 nominations. So I think some people are still holding out to the Julia Roberts actress drama. I don't see that happening. I think Tessa Thompson is in a good position to maybe get her first Globe nomination and maybe even her first SAG nomination for this role.
It's true that she hasn't been nominated for a SAG.
Yeah, and because it is such a coveted, such a beloved, such a studied and admired text, I think that really helps her. And then I think that Nina Haas, because the role has been sort of reinvented and, they give it such a fresh spin, and she's an amazing actor with a tremendous career, that she's gonna join her for those nominations. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But to me, the sort of explosion waiting to happen is that, I don't know, there's something about this movie that I feel could do really well at BAFTA.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if it's just the involvement of Nina Haas, but I would really not sleep on this film. And I think that those particular actors are in a position now in their career where it would not surprise me that they've, accrued enough esteem from their peers to finally break through.
That's what's frustrating about this, is that on paper, they make perfect sense. On paper, we need that fifth spot for actors. Tessa Thompson has been working for a very long time, and she's certainly in the class of actor where they're aware of her, they're aware of her talent, they like her choices, they like the career that she's building. They're going to be happy to nominate her. Nina Haas is, one of the greatest German actresses, who's yet to even receive an Academy Award nomination. And I'm sure there are people internationally and domestically who would jump at the chance to nominate her for an Oscar, for an acting award. And so on paper, she would make perfect sense in the supporting actress category, a category that, by the way, I might add, is very volatile, but also is missing a key thing, which is a period piece. Those period pieces tend to do very well in this category. And we have limited options here, between Marty Supreme, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Hedda. That's about it. Sinners, possibly, if you count that, because it's also fantasy, maybe not. A period piece tends to get into supporting actress, at least. And right now, we're missing that, so both of those contenders would make perfect sense to fill in those spots in actress and supporting actress, and for them to get in together.
Yeah.
But will enough voters see it? That's the big question.
I think that's my thing, is that if you just get that small group of people who are passionate about Nina Haas, what they've done with the role and what she delivers, like, that's the kind of thing that would have been an absolute slam dunk of a nomination in 2014. You know what I mean? Had it been handled appropriately before the streaming age, and it had been handled by Fox Searchlight or Focus Features, it would have been an absolute slam dunk of a nomination. And I still feel that as a voter, as an audience member, you're going to see that performance and feel that. I think it's very much like you said. The question is, are you going to put the screener on?
Right.
That's it. And so if Tessa Thompson, even if she's by herself, can get them to put the screener on because she was a Golden Globe nominee, because there are 6 spots, and because actresses divided between 2 categories. If she's able to do that, I really do feel like voters are going to be massively compelled by what Nina Haas has done and Hedda.
I would love that. I would love recognition for both of those actresses. But again, I don't know if we can survive, or if they can survive the, debacle that has been Amazon choosing After the Hunt.
Crazy.
So I don't know. Again, on paper, they would solve everything. They would solve the best actress race, and they would solve the best supporting actress race.
Right.
Can they get there? I don't know.
I like the pair. I like
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Tessa Thompson is someone like Paul Mescal. They're aware and they want, or Michael B. Jordan, they're aware they want to nominate them.
Yes. And also that's like kind of cool symmetry because they're co-stars from, Ryan Coogler's Creed. So
exactly.
Kind of...
Nina Haas might have been close with Tar. People are aware she's, an iconic actress from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to want to nominate people like that, actors like that, of that caliber. It's just, can they survive the fumble from After the Hunt?
Yeah.
So, I hope for them, and they would solve everything, but I'm not sure.
Well, I certainly would keep an eye out for them. And I think as the year starts to come to a close, I think you may see both those names, show up higher on people's lists than we're giving them credit for.
Right. And so, we're going to try hard to make an episode for next week, because Wicked is coming out, and we have a lot of thoughts about Wicked and where it could land. Hopefully we'll be seeing it soon. Marty Supreme continues to get traction from people who are seeing it and feel that it's a bona fide contender. And we'll also have updates on our predictions, so be on the lookout for that. Follow us on our Twitter at Academy Anon, and
visit us on our website at framesandflicker.com.
Both of them are listed on the cover art for the podcast, and be sure to check us out, please.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Till next time.
It's been a pleasure. The music on this episode, entitled Cool Cats, was graciously provided by Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. https://creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0.
Disclaimer. The Academy Anonymous podcast is in no way affiliated or endorsed by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences.